Hi, everyone, and welcome to Video Game Book Club, the show where we pick, we play, and we discuss a video game each and every month. I'm your host, JP Gomez, and this is your co-host, Benjamin Tizzle Toops. Ben, today we are going to talk about Control, chosen by the Video Game Book Club community. If you want to be a member of the Video Game Book Club community and send us questions that we will answer today on this podcast, then join the Discord. Before we dive right in and talk about Control, Benny, how are you?
I am good. I'm solid. I've had a good weekend, a tiring weekend. Did a lot of gardening yesterday. How fun is that? People
Super
say
fun.
gamers need to touch grass. I touched a lot of grass yesterday, so that was great. How are you?
Dude, I did a little bit of other work outside in the sun. I had a volleyball tournament.
Ooh,
And it went great. It went great. We got fourth place, which is
wow.
awesome.
Yeah,
Out of seven.
out of four. Oh,
Out
okay.
of so not that good, but not that bad. You know, right in the middle.
Yeah.
But Benny, you can see my face is a little sunburnt. Just a little, because we were out there for like hours.
Right.
But there's only one other part that is sunburnt. Like I didn't reapply on my face. I applied everywhere else. But I didn't apply at the top of my feet.
Oh man,
Brother, just the top of my feet are two red pancakes, dude. Just a circular beam of death was just pounding on my feet the whole day. And yeah, they feel horrendous.
That'll do it. Listen, the top of your feet. I feel like those are the two that get people. It's the scalp and it's the top of the feet. Those will get you.
I don't have a bald spot, but we all have a cow's lick or whatever. You know, we all have that thing right there in the back, and you just gotta put a little dollop. Just grab your finger and you little boop.
There you go.
But you know who doesn't have to put any sunscreen on? It's Jessie Faden, dude, because she is inside the oldest house the whole time in Control. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Benny, today we're talking about Control, again, chosen by the community. Everyone voted, so many votes. It was awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. And by an overwhelming amount, we are playing this game that released in 2019 by a Finnish game studio called Remedy, who, you know, at this point are critically acclaimed, I would say.
Yeah.
Ben, why don't you tell us what Control is on paper?
On paper, I don't know. I mean, like, so I knew very little about Control going into this. It came super highly recommended from our community. Obviously, they all voted for us to play it by, like you said, by a pretty wide margin. So I knew very little about it. Going into it, I knew some of the gameplay elements. I had seen like maybe some clips from when it came out, but honestly, I missed this game. Like I totally missed it when it released. It just kind of passed me by. I don't know why. But I knew it was there. You know, everyone in the community talks highly of it. So I was just like, oh, this is going to be some kind of third-person shooter. Like, you know, I'm sure it'll have some fantasy elements. I'm sure stuff like that. Like, I just didn't know anything about it. I really didn't. But once we started out playing, I realized that it's got this crazy deep lore. It's tied in with this whole Remedy universe, like you said, that spans to Alan Wake, and you know, all these different games. So there's a lot to this game. It was way more than the kind of generic shooter than I was expecting. But yeah, on its surface, you know, very, very kind of eerie, kind of spooky, maybe a little bit in parts. Third person shooter, lots of fun abilities and lots of deep lore to learn about as you go. And I'm sure we're going to be diving into all that.
Oh, we are. It also has a little bit, or maybe a lot of it, of a Metroidvania aspect to it, where, you know, your protagonist learns different like movement abilities that will then unlock more and more of the map. So you have those like skill checks that are prevalent in like a Metroidvania game, but also as you go through the oldest house, which is again the setting of this game, you have different security level checks. So as Jessie, your protagonist, kind of does main quests, she gains access to more and more different areas of the game. So that's like a secondary check. If you remember Rain World and you have those gates in Rain World, is more like that. But there's a little bit also of skill checks that you can, do to kind of progress and check around everything. There's so much content in this game, like Ben is talking about. There's a lot of like reading material if you're into that, and there's a lot of visual material. There's a lot of side missions to do. There's a lot of hidden locations. I looked it up, and there are 34 hidden locations in this game. I feel like I managed to find a handful, maybe less than 10 or so. But 34, I thought, oh, I did good. Maybe I found like 16. But there's 34, which is crazy. And each of them gives you an ability point. And that's one of the ways for you to complete your skill tree, which we'll definitely dive into later. But Benny, for those who don't know, I guess that's kind of what Control is. It's just kind of like a search action game, Metroidvania-ish action adventure game where it's third person and it's a shooter. You have a gun and then you go around and you shoot baddies left and right. And then you follow this mysterious story, I guess. So Ben, let's dive right in. Can you tell me, how does the game start and what is the main goal of this game?
Yeah, so the game starts, obviously we have our protagonist, Jesse Faden, as you introduced us to earlier. Jesse is a seemingly pretty normal woman. We see her at the very beginning of the game. She walks in to this pretty normal looking kind of generic government building, but it's empty. It's eerily empty. She walks in off the streets of New York, and there's no one really around. And, the very first moments of the game are Jessie kind of walking around the building, trying to get her bearings, trying to find anyone pretty much. And the first person she finds is the janitor, whose name is Ati. And Ati is someone that I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot. He's a recurring character in the game. But the first time you meet him, he's just this like quirky Finnish janitor who kind of mumbles to himself. And immediately, Ati kind of points you in the right direction, but immediately the game starts to kind of introduce itself, because as you're walking around this building, it changes. You round a corner and then you come back to the same room and the room is different. A new hallway has opened up, or, the portraits on the wall are different, or things like that. And Ati, there's kind of a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge that maybe Ati isn't what he seems he is, because there's like a little Easter egg almost. There's our protagonist, Jesse, has like an internal monologue. That's a big part of the game. As you're playing, huge. Jesse kind of talks to herself basically in her own head. And I forget exactly what she says, but you talk to Ati and, he instructs you to go somewhere and you walk away. And Jesse has one of those internal monologue moments. And she says like, oh, that guy's kind of weird or something like that. And then Ati responds to that. He responds to your thoughts and he like says something in response to it. So it's like, oh, that was kind of weird. What's going on with this janitor? But you're walking around, you're trying to find anyone in this bureau. And, I would say the first like major thing that you find is the director's office. You walk in to the office of the director, and you find the director. You hear, as you approach the office, you hear the director, you hear a gunshot go off, and you walk in the room and the director's lying dead on the ground with a gun next to him. And of course, our protagonist, Jesse, picks up the gun, and what happens, JP?
She immediately gets transported away from where she is standing in the office. And then she's in this, like, it's called like the astral plane. But basically, she's in this like supernatural world, not inside of our world area, where she's like floating in these rocks, basically. And there's nothingness around you, except if you look up, there's an inverted white like pyramid looking up at you or looking down at you, which is really interesting. And that's a very common theme. Of course, everyone knows, I think, that the logo of Control is that kind of upside down triangle.
Right.
And basically in the astral plane, she starts like hearing voices, and Jessie has a lot of voices going on in her head because she has her internal monologue. She talks. There's also an entity living inside of her head that we will talk about in a little bit, who instructs her on what to do. And she is kind of the one that was telling her and pushing her to go to this building in general. Additionally, Jessie, by grabbing that gun, she has kind of like ascended a little bit in power by grabbing that gun. And now she starts hearing the voice of the previous director of the Federal Bureau of Control, which is the guy that seemingly just shot himself with that gun. So there's a lot going on, but essentially she gets teleported into this plane of existence, and I don't know, maybe Trench, who is the person who was shot, or the gun itself, or someone instructs her on how to use that gun. She goes through this thing, and honestly, she's not super faded by it. Like, I would be like, what the fuck is going on? Like, where am I? You know, she's kind of like, okay, here I am. And let's shoot this gun. Thanks for teaching me how to do it. And then she gets teleported back into the oldest house, into where she was. And she's like, okay, I don't really know what happens. I have this gun now. Let's go figure out who else is around. And inside of the oldest house, now that she has a gun, you start finding enemies. And these enemies look like they used to be people, but they have been kind of taken over by something. And so they're glowing like orangish. Their eyes are orange. They can float. They are super strong, and they definitely want to murder you. So you start fighting. And what you find around in the oldest house are these like bunkers, and they're called shelters. And in the first shelter that you find, you open it and people come out, and they're like, oh my God, is everything okay? You know, like, what's happening? And as soon as they see you, they're like, are you the new director? And you're like, I don't know, I just got here. And then they're like, well, you're holding the director object of power. And that's your introduction to basically the whole game. And so the person that comes out, and that is kind of like your biggest ally, and kind of like your navigator through this control building, the oldest house, is Emily Pope. Ben, how did you feel about Emily Pope when you first met her?
Very like standard. I don't know. I didn't have like strong opinions. I was like, oh, okay, great. Like there's somebody I can actually talk to, and somebody who can, like Emily, in that first introduction, Emily serves as like kind of a lore drop on you, basically. You can ask her all kinds of questions about the building you're in, about being the director, about the object of power, the gun, about all this stuff. So she plays a very central role in like explaining to you, because you as the player are like, what is going on? Like what's happening in this game right now? I don't understand what's happening. But Emily kind of serves to answer a lot of questions. But there's also immediately a kind of disconnect between Jesse and Emily, because Jesse, is hiding something, basically. Yeah. Jesse is hiding the real reason that she's here. Emily is like, oh great, Jesse's here. You're the new director. You need to help us take out the hiss, and which is, you know, the kind of affliction that you referred to, where all the agents are kind of glowing red and evil. And Jesse's like, great, you know, happy to do that. But in her head, Jesse's like, I can't tell her why I'm here yet. And the reason why Jesse is here is to find her brother, who apparently was kidnapped by the Bureau like 17 years ago or something like that. So immediately there's this kind of push and pull between, you know, you want to trust Emily, you want to feel like you can trust her because she's the only sane person you've met so far. We've met Ati, but he seems like he's maybe not all there mentally. So it's like, okay, she's a normal person. I can talk to her. I can kind of get my bearings with her in the game, essentially. Yeah. But yeah, so she kind of serves to just like ground you a little bit, I would say.
She does. I just didn't trust her. Like I couldn't trust anyone in this game at the beginning. Maybe only Ati, because he was just so weird, and you're like, okay, like when a game introduces a character like that is so quirky, you're like, okay, that's gonna be a good person, you know. Yeah. But you know, Jesse is here to infiltrate the FBC. Imagine someone trying to infiltrate the FBI. Like that's like the level of what she's trying to do. She's trying to infiltrate this governmental body that is really, you know, powerful and bizarre, and she wants to find her brother. That's her goal. Honestly, when you picture it that way. She fucking had no plan. She had no plan. She just walked in, which is so bizarre to me that like for 17 years she's been looking for her brother, and she just one day is like, I'm just gonna show up, bro. I'm just gonna walk in and be like, where the hell is my brother? You know, which is hilarious. But of course, you know, how the story unfolds in a way where like, hey, actually there's an affliction going on. And now, Jesse, you are the director of the FBC. You have come from just a bystander to literally top of the food chain in this place. And so people will listen to you as you start walking around in the game, and you find people that are not afflicted by the hiss, people that are normal. They're like, oh, hey, straighten up, the director is here, you know. And those tiny jokes happen all around, which is really fun. But Jessie, in her monologue, she doesn't trust anyone. She thinks everyone's out to get her. You know, all of these people played a part in her brother being kidnapped, and so she's like, hell no, you know, I'm not gonna really participate. And so that's why I kind of felt that way with Emily. I was like, yeah, anyone that I meet, I don't like. So Emily's like, listen, there's all of these like important people that you probably need to go find and help out so that we can figure out what we need to do against the hiss. She's the director, but there's also like a head of research and a head of like security and a head of operations and a head of something else. And all of these people are stuck in a different section of the oldest house. Jessie figures out, and, you know, Emily kind of helps her with this, that there's all of these control points in the whole oldest house that she can cleanse. So she has this innate power where she can cleanse things that are afflicted by, I don't know, some supernatural thing. And part of it is that the oldest house itself, which is this building, is moving. It's moving a lot, and it's really bizarre how it moves. Ben alluded to it. You look at a room and then you look at it again and it's different, but it's more than that. The walls are warping, cubes and cement are coming out of everywhere. The rooms looked really bizarre, but if you cleanse that room, everything kind of goes back to seemingly normal. You use these control points gameplay wise to navigate between the whole map of the game, basically. So really, that's your goal now. You, as the player, you want to figure out what the hell happened to Dylan, and you want to go through kind of like understanding Jesse a little bit more. And the game is pointing you quest to kind of like go find these people that will help you put the full picture together of what is happening in the oldest house and what affliction you have come and stumbled upon in.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so you touched on kind of the oldest house and the nature of it. That was one thing that immediately jumped out to me. So like Control as a game, I feel like when I first started playing it, you can immediately tell that it has some very strong influences from other types of media. I'm curious what you felt like. What influences did you sense immediately when you started playing?
I talked about this on the checkpoint a little bit, but I immediately found the influence of Inception, and how in Inception, as you know, the protagonists of Inception are going through people's dreams and minds and everything, and it's really bizarre how they can kind of like change the landscape of a seemingly normal looking building to something really bizarre and complex and like supernatural. And the developers of Control, the Remedy developers, kind of recreated that really well. Like you're walking around this building and it's really odd, like the way that you have to go through it, even though it looks mundane. I mean, at the end of the day, this is just an office building, you know, and you walk around it and there's just offices everywhere. And there's like, you know, a lot of cubes. Open work plan, you know, everyone loves that, I'm sure. And and you know what I was thinking actually that I wanted to bring up? Can you imagine that there was a hybrid schedule on the Control, the FPC? Like imagine you and I were workers at the FPC and we had a hybrid schedule. Tuesdays and Thursdays we work from home. Yeah. And the day you work from home, the whole building gets afflicted by the hiss. And you get no emails, no Teams messages, no nothing. And then you're like, what the hell's happening? You know, okay, I didn't have any work to do today. And then you go to work the next day and the building is shut down. And you just hear gunfights. Yeah, I guess I gotta go home. I'm not going there anymore. I also felt that, you know, the game itself, it's spooky. So I can see a lot of like, kind of like the Shining type horror movies to it.
Sure.
It just has that tension that builds up and builds up and builds up, but it doesn't necessarily release all at once, which I think is a really effective way that horror movies provide their horror, which is just a tension that never lets you go. And I like that a lot. And finally, I was thinking The Matrix a little bit, just because of kind of like the aesthetic of... It makes sense at the time because The Matrix came out in like 2000 or 2001, maybe 1999, I don't know. But, you know, you're playing a modern game with modern things, but all the technology that they use is very 90s, you know, which is really, really interesting. And I think effective in just, again, providing a little bit of kind of like oddity to this modern world that you're kind of experiencing.
Yeah, those are both totally valid. I see those for sure. For me, the biggest influence by far that I felt when I first started playing this game is the book House of Leaves. And so, are you familiar with House of Leaves, JP?
I'm not. No.
Okay, so it's this crazy, insane book. If you've played Control and you haven't read this book, I would recommend you read it, because I think if you play and like Control, you're definitely going to like this book.
I'm putting it on my Goodreads right now.
Yeah, well, it's like it's a book that kind of defies the standards of books. It's like a triple narrative, essentially. It's the story of a guy who, like, so it's a guy's story, but that story is being covered by like a scholar, and then the scholar's story is being covered by another guy. So there's like 3 layers to this narrative. It's crazy. And the book kind of bounces back and forth between each. But the main core of the story is about a guy, and he's in his house, his normal house, and he's like doing some renovations, and one day he realizes he's doing renovations, so he's looking at like the blueprint and stuff like that. And one day he realizes that the inside of his house is 1 inch longer than the outside of his house, which is very like unsettling. Obviously, if you were to find that, you know, the interior measurement of something defied the exterior measurement of it, you'd be like, what's happening?
Yeah.
So all these kind of weird things start unfolding in his house, and then one day a hallway appears that was not there before.
Oh my God.
And so the book kind of from there goes into this like expedition into the hallway. There's this giant labyrinth essentially under this guy's house, and it's like the story of the exploration into the labyrinth. It's like shifting and it's like changing constantly. And then of course there's the layers I mentioned where, like, you know, people are finding this guy's story and kind of commenting on it. The book starts to take different forms, like physically within the book. It starts to like change. It's really hard to describe. Like the shape of the pages starts changing. It's a reading experience unlike anything else, and I very highly recommend it. It's great, especially if you like Control and you haven't read it already. But that was like the biggest influence on me by far, because of like the shifting nature of the oldest house, some of like the narrative elements as well, where it's like you're getting these kind of one thing we haven't touched on yet. Since this is an office building, basically, there's documents everywhere. Everything is documented. There's a memo about everything. There's, you know, if something weird happens, someone's writing an email about it that you find somewhere. So those kind of meta layers to the narrative also reminded me a lot of that as well. But yeah, I'm so sure that House of Leaves was a very big influence on the developers when they were making this game.
That book sounds like such a trip. I want to.
It's insane. It's insane, but it absolutely hooks you, and you get to a point you just can't stop reading. It's crazy. It's crazy.
The cool thing about it is like how House of Leaves and Control really grab that uneasiness yes. vibe, because it's, you know, in the House of Leaves, it's the protagonist's house. In this case, you're in an office building. Like, these are real settings that you can see, you can feel, you can imagine, you can picture. Maybe you live it every single day, but things start to change and it just becomes so weird and so bizarre. I was thinking about like comparing it to other like weird games that like have played with the player's cognition a little bit, like Hellblade. So we played Hellblade. Yeah. And Hellblade, obviously the protagonist is going through some psychosis, but the player starts experiencing these like really, really bizarre things, and it's unsettling. But the uneasiness that I felt and the tension that I felt playing Control was a lot higher than in Hellblade, because in Hellblade I am already playing in a fantastical setting, kind of, that, you know, I don't experience on a day to day, which is like a fjord in Norway.
Right,
you know, whereas
right.
here you experience this every day. You know what it is to go into an office building, and when you see all of these bizarre things and you experience all of these crazy sounds, and looking at a ball of like concrete that is like shape shifting and running towards you and making you scream, it's just like so tense, you know. So they just did such a good job with that. And honestly, playing this game like in the evenings with your headphones on, it's such a good experience, to be honest.
It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming.
Yeah,
like, honestly,
it's overwhelming. And that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. That not just is like what you experience overwhelming in terms of like visuals, but also there's just so much going on. Like Jessie, again, you know, I was kind of making a joke about what her plan was going to be walking into this building, but she literally didn't know anything, like the player. So you walk into this building and everyone is talking about things as if you know what they are. You know, it's like if you read a really heavy sci-fi book. Like, have you read Dune?
Yes.
Okay. Dune, you know, now everyone's in the movie. So, you know, and then if you watch the previous movie from the 80s or whatever, like, you know, maybe you knew what was happening. But if you read Dune without knowing anything about Dune, you get like 200 pages in and you kind of still don't know what's going on, because they use the verbiage that they use is so like unique to Dune that it literally means zero to you. It doesn't mean anything. And so you're just very confused. And I feel like they do a little bit of that in this game as well. Effectively, they're trying to confuse you, and the setting in general is confusing. So it just adds to that tension, which is effective, I think.
It's also overwhelming, like in a much more physical sense than that. Like part of the game, you know, the main crux of the game is the hiss, right? Which is this affliction that's taking over the agents and making them evil and kind of corrupting them. And part of that is that people that are corrupted by the hiss are like floating in the air and reciting this chant. And when you're first starting the game, it's gibberish, and it remains gibberish. It is gibberish. But you like physically can't even make out what they're saying. But the result of it is that there's like several voices at all times chanting gibberish at different paces, different octaves, everything in your ears, like everywhere you go. And if you have like any sort of auditory sensitivity, this is going to be a very like viscerally overwhelming experience for you. Like I don't have that, and it was still overwhelming for me. Just having that crazy, inexplicable, unintelligible chanting in your ears at all time was like very overwhelming and like overstimulating, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like I had a little bit of an advantage because I streamed most of this game to you know, on Twitch, mostly to the Video Game Book Club community, and I'm talking as I play the game and kind of like, you know, say how I'm feeling. Obviously, I'm talking to chat and responding to things and stuff. So like my voice kind of like subdued the chanting in my ears. Right. But then the like last 30% of the game I played, you know, by myself. I didn't stream it, and 100%. Like I almost had a new perspective of the game because it was so overwhelming in the auditory way, but it also just added to the spookiness of it. It added to the tension, and it added to the uneasiness. And yeah, playing this game that is about, I don't know, 15 hours or 20 hours if you do all the side quests. It's wow. It's a lot for sure.
Yeah. I also thought it was really interesting. Like we talked about kind of our expectations going into the game. And going into it, you think, because you go into the game and Jesse is immediately like, gotta find Dylan. Got to get him out of here. Got to take down the Bureau, basically.
Where's my bro?
That's what it seems like she's here to do. And the game like immediately subverts that, like immediately, because you go in to do this, And then suddenly the Bureau, who is this like antagonist in your mind, is like, hey, you're the director now. Congrats. Like you now run the Bureau. And it's like, what does that, what do you mean I run the Bureau? Like, what does that even mean? Do I still play the game? Like, I don't understand. But it's just, I don't know. It was so like subversive, and it just added to, yeah, the overall like uneasiness and the overall confusion that I felt and we felt, going into this first part of the game, I guess. I don't know. It was crazy.
My cat just jumped into my lap, and so I just want to show her and just
pancake check.
Hey, pancake check. She's hanging out. She wants to talk about Control too. She saw most of the game from my lap. So, if at any point you want to ask her a question, Ben, because you're unclear about something,
okay,
we can do that.
We'll do.
Yes. So again, we thought this is just a vengeance story. We're going to go find Dylan. We're going to get out of here. Everything's going to be okay. But no, You are now the director of the FPC. And so basically the next portion of the game, the mid section of the game, let's call it, is just you going and doing a bunch of different quests for all of these people that you find in the FPC that are your employees now. They're your subordinates. And basically, as we were chatting, Emily is kind of like directing you a little bit or guiding you into, hey, you should find all these people. They're in trouble. You obviously have a natural ability to subdue all of the supernatural that is happening inside of the oldest house. So really, it's up to you to save us, And she's like, okay, well, Jesse's not a bad person. Even though she wants to take down the FPC, she's like, I'm going to do this, So anyways, you go through all of these like new main quests to go find these people that will help you kind of understand everything, but also you are helping them. And the cool thing about it is that obviously you get to experience the oldest house, and you go through different sections of this world that Remedy has created inside one building. And everything that we've talked to so far is in the executive sector of the building, which is where the director's office is and a bunch of offices. And it really just looks like an office building. But everywhere else in this building is crazy. It's just huge. Like the first sector that you go is the maintenance sector. And there's a whole power plant inside of the maintenance sector, like genuinely a power plant. And so all of this is living inside of this building. And you're wondering, okay, well, how big is this building? Well, it's kind of like the House of Leaves that Ben was saying. This building looks normal size, but inside it is infinitely large, and there's just an infinitely things, and there's an infinite ecology that is living in this building. And understanding the ecology of the building is part of, maybe you're never going to understand it really, but like, experiencing the ecology of the building is part of like what makes this game so interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, you're just going through that kind of what you just described is kind of the gameplay loop for what I would call like the mid game of Control. Basically, You're going to all these different sectors. You're trying to find the people. You mentioned the first one, the maintenance sector. You're trying to get the power plant back online so that you can access the other areas of the building, because the building is in like a shutdown right now because of the hiss. Everything is in a total lockdown, so you can't go to the other areas of the building. And in order to lift the lockdown, you have to get the generator back online. So that's number one. But as you're going, you're learning more and more about what are called the like objects of power and these altered world events. These are two of the like jargony terms kind of that you mentioned that they start throwing around early in the game, and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're going to have to explain this. But it seems like the core purpose of the FBC, the Federal Bureau of Control, is to investigate these objects of power and these altered world events. And essentially what those are somewhere in history, maybe through all of history, there's kind of some insinuations through all of history, these paranormal things started happening. And they started happening in the form of objects that grant you a power if you touch them. Like an object, like for example, the director's gun is one of them. It's an object of power. And what, I mentioned throughout history, because there's some documents you can find that allude to the director's gun being an object of power throughout history. And I think it makes a pretty clear reference that in, a long time ago, this gun was Excalibur, basically. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's setting the stage that these objects of power have been around, and it's just now that we're starting to investigate them through the FBC. But these objects of power, these altered world events, they're kind of two halves of the same coin. The objects of power are normal objects that grant you some ability. Like, you find a toy telephone that gives you the ability to talk to the former director, Trench, in the afterlife, presumably. You find like a floppy disk that gives you the ability to levitate objects and like throw them at your enemies. You find a television that gives you the ability to like construct a shield around yourself. So stuff like that. It's these objects that grant you the abilities. And then these altered world events are sort of paranormal occurrences that occur throughout the world in the form of objects of power or otherwise, that kind of connect these two realms almost, because it seems pretty clear that there's all these other dimensions and worlds that we're not aware of that are kind of leaking into our own through these altered world events. And it seems like that's what the FBC is here to kind of investigate. So we're learning a lot about that. We're kind of gaining a lot of these new combat abilities as Jesse is kind of moving through the oldest house, unlocking all these different research sectors. And eventually you start to find Dylan. You kind of get closer and closer to Dylan's trail, which feels pretty early. Like you're still kind of early in the game at this point, but you go through maintenance, you go through the research sector. We're kind of blazing through these, but this is kind of how it feels in the game. You're kind of going through them at a pretty fast clip, and you're kind of unlocking all these abilities and stuff as you go. Particularly in the research sector, though, I think was pretty interesting. It was one of the more interesting early game segments. How did you find that one?
I liked it a lot. I was gonna say too, just that the cool thing about the FBC is that there's not just the objects of power that you can interact with, but there's objects of power everywhere, and you find memos and you find recordings, which is most of what I interacted with, recordings of researchers playing basically with these objects of power. And it's just really interesting because like there's one that is just like a rubber duck. And there's a story about the rubber duck, and it moves by itself. And every time you don't look at it, all of a sudden it moves and it appears somewhere else, which is creepy. Imagine if you're hanging around your house and then one particular object, as creepy as a rubber duck can be, is just, you just find it in different places, and it's just really, really creepy. But then the game kind of makes it funny, and it breaks the tension of the game, where the researcher is saying, now attempting to communicate with the object of power. And she goes, quack. Communication failed, and you find stuff like that everywhere, and all of these different objects of power are just mundane objects that like do something, and it's really, really good. In the research sector, you walk in, and this is probably the sector that I like the most, where you walked in and there's trees. Now there's like actually like flora, sorry, in the oldest house. There's all these trees. There's a lot of light that comes in to the building, even though you're like, where is the light coming from? I'm like deep into this building. Like there's also like a source of a sun somewhere. Like this oldest house is so bizarre. There's shadows now and stuff that like look like it's coming from a natural light. The research center is really cool because it brings you to really, really different areas of the game. For example, if you go down to like the most bottom section of the research center, you find that, oh wait, there's zombies in this game as well, and that there's been this like breakout infestation, not just of the hiss, but of this mold thing that takes the shape of basically a little bit of like a Last of Us kind of like planty zombie thing. And there's a doctor there who's a professor in a university who is like so interested in it, and she doesn't see it as like a bad thing. She's just like, yeah, these zombies are here. We need to learn more about them. Can you please go find more about this for me? And you're like, I'm the director. Like, I'm supposed to tell you what to do. And she's like, yeah, but you're really strong. So can you do that? And that just keeps happening to Jessie. Everyone asks her to do something, and your mid game is just quest after quest after quest. And all you want to know is about your brother. you find especially like one of them that really got me a little bit upset was the director of security maybe or of operations, I don't remember, Marshall.
Yeah.
Where you find her, you do this whole puzzle thing from Dr. Darling, which we haven't talked about, which is crazy. Yeah, we need to talk about him. And after you do this whole thing, you finally meet her, and she is kind of like standoffish a little bit. And you're like, hey, I saved you, and I saved you guys. Please, can you tell me about Dylan? And she goes, oh, I know about Dylan. And I can tell you about Dylan, but I won't. First, can you do this for me? And I'm like, no, dude, stop it. Stop it. We're on Dylan's trail. We're on his ass. But they don't want to tell you shit. They don't want to tell you anything. They just keep telling you, please do one more thing for me. And of course, the cool thing about the Control is that the game is so interesting and the oldest house is so interesting that I don't really care what the story is at this point. I don't really care what they're asking me to do. I just want to go to the next area to see someone. And Marshall sends you to the rock quarry, which is like this, basically like a coal mine. It looks like a gigantic coal mine in the middle of the oldest house where they're like mining this black rock. I don't really know what the black rock does, Benny. Maybe you know what the black rock does. But I'm just like, okay, there's just a coal mine now, you know? And it's just, yeah, I don't know. It's really cool. The research center is kind of like, to me, like the catalyst of all of that, because it's very vertical and it sends you to a bunch of different, it branches out a lot. It sends you to a bunch of different places. I like that a lot.
For sure. And yeah, like you noted, it's also where the game really starts to open up in terms of a lot of the more, real parts of it, like the objects of power and AWEs and stuff. It's where you get like a really, the best sense of it is through the research sector, I would say. And of course, like you mentioned, we cannot talk about the research sector without talking about Dr. Darling. So Dr. Darling is the darling of this game. I mean, if we're just being honest,
he's the belle of the ball,
fan favorite. He is the head of the research sector, and you never actually meet him in the game, which is really interesting. And I maybe we'll talk about how we feel about that later. But the only way you interact with Dr. Darling through the game is through these recorded videos. So one thing that Control does, is it has real videos, like real shot videos. You mentioned Senua's Sacrifice earlier. They do that in that game as well. But you get these real recorded videos of an actor playing Dr. Darling, talking about stuff in the game, talking about objects of power, researching them. You know, Darling is the head of research, so he kind of walks you through a lot of that. And he's a really great character. You interact with him a lot through these recordings, and he gives a ton of lore about the game, I would say, for sure. But it also seems like he's kind of like, as you go and as when the first videos you see of him are very generic. They're very like, welcome to the research sector. Here we're going to explain to you today the objects of power. But as you go,
you're like, thank God, he was such a good guide to half of these things. I'm like, please teach me more.
I know, for sure, yeah. But as you go, he's getting more neurotic. It seems like whatever situation he's involved in is getting more and more kind of out of hand, and he's getting more and more like antsy and neurotic in these videos that you're watching. So it kind of points to like the state of the Bureau as you're going. Of course, you're moving through the research sector. You are getting closer to Dylan. You go to the security sector where you find that you hear that Dylan is being held prisoner, essentially. I think Marshall maybe tells you eventually, like you said, that Dylan is being held essentially prisoner in the in the security sector. So you head there, you move through the security sector to the Panopticon, eventually finding Dylan's cell, and it's empty. And right when you find Dylan's cell and you get there and you realize it's empty, you get a call from Emily Pope back in the executive sector. And she's like, oh, Dylan's here and he's waiting for you. And you're like, great, cool. Yeah. I'm so glad. But you head back to the executive sector. You talk to Emily, and this is where you meet Dylan for the first time. Do you want to tell us about meeting Dylan in that moment?
Yeah, it's so a couple of things though. Dylan in his cell, he like scratched with his fingernails, presumably, your name in
Mm-hmm.
his like one of his walls in his cell. You also come to find out that basically Dylan was being held in this cell because he killed someone in the FBC.
Yeah.
Whether that was an accident or not, it's up to interpretation. There's a lot of like memos and recordings that you find later on, but that's why he's being held captive. Now you go back to the research center, sorry, the executive center. You go see Emily, and Dylan's not there, and you're like, "What the hell? Where's Dylan?" And Emily's like, "Well, he was here, but he turned himself in, and he's like, I'm not stable. Like, put me captive again." And you're like, "What?" Okay, where is he? And then she points you to where he is. Another room opens up in the executive center, and you find Dylan in almost like have you seen Dragon Ball Z?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's kind of like in those chambers that Goku and Vegeta and Piccolo would like kind of like encapsulate themselves in,
Right.
to kind of like recuperate for the next battle or whatever. He is in one of those, and he's floating. And oh my god, it's so bizarre. I wish I could like show you exactly how he is floating in this kind of tube looking thing.
Yeah.
But he just looks like there's a almost honestly, genuinely, it almost looks like there's like an insect living in his body and crawling all over him. That's
Oh
how
my
he
God.
like contorts himself
Yeah.
and kind of like shifts and turns and stuff. His head is always looking up. His eyes are like moving around like crazy. And just like Ben is saying, all the people around the oldest house that are floating have a similar look to them, and they're chanting gibberish. And Dylan is chanting gibberish, but it's completely different gibberish than what you think it is. You can interact with him, and you can talk with him. Not once, but you actually can talk to Dylan about 15 times, and it'll give you 15 different pieces of dialogue. And honestly, not a lot makes sense. Dylan just tells you, really good voice actor also, by the way.
Yeah.
But he tells you that he has had a dream. And then he goes to explain what the dream is. Then you interact with him again, and he tells you about another dream. Jessie starts getting annoyed, and she's like, "Oh my god, shut the fuck up about the dream." It's like, "Come on, wake up, talk to me, bro." And then he keeps doing that over and over again. And there's a moment where one of the dreams that he talks about kind of breaks the fourth wall a little bit, and he's like, "I had a dream that we're like in a video game or whatever." Not exactly like that. It wasn't as like clear like that, but that's the interaction that you have with Dylan. I don't know, Ben, can you remind me, like, I don't know if Dylan is the one that tells you like where to go next, but basically you're like, okay, Dylan is in peril. I need to figure out how I can like fix him. And the way that I need to do this is to find where they have like, well, basically Polaris tells you where you want to go. But basically Dylan and Jesse had an accident or an incident when they were little.
Yeah.
They used to live in this town called Ordinary. And throughout the game, you kind of like hear a little bit and piece together the story of what happens in Ordinary. But basically, they find an object of power, which is a slide projector.
Mm-hmm.
And they used to play with the slide projector a lot. From the slide projector, in one of the, let's say, playtimes that they had with it, Polaris, the entity that is living in Jesse's head, comes out of the slide projector and then hangs out with Jesse and Dylan in their brains. At one point, though, one of the times that they play with the slide projector, they caused an accident. An explosion or something happens where every single adult and person, really, in Ordinary, vanishes.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess does an explosion actually happen? I can't really remember.
I don't think it's an explosion. I think it's just, I think the adult, it's like a little ambiguous what actually happens, but essentially, like you said, the other children they were playing with are like corrupted by some entity, some malevolent entity. They met Polaris, who is a benevolent entity. But a bad entity comes out of whatever slide projector they're doing, and corrupts all the children, and all of the adults in Ordinary disappear. And then I think, essentially what happens is this is an altered world event, right? What they're doing, they're interacting with the slide projector, they're causing an altered world event. And so, of course, who intervenes but the Federal Bureau of Control? They come in to investigate, they come in to see what happens. Jesse and Dylan are basically the only people left in Ordinary at this point. So they take Dylan in for questioning, study, whatever, and Jesse escapes. So that is kind of how the game was set up. This is the events in the world that led to the setup of the game. Dylan was kidnapped, taken by the FBC, and Jesse escaped. So that's why she's here now.
And that's why Jesse's like, okay, what I need to do is go find that slide projector. And that's kind of where you go into the end game after you meet Dylan for the first time. Can you tell me what did you feel about that meetup with Dylan for the first time? Like, they build it up so much, and at this point you've played the game for like about 10 hours. Yeah. Tell me how you felt.
Anticlimactic. I think I was, the whole setup of it obviously was building up to a big moment, like you said. But it's kind of interesting because it's like Dylan is very clearly infected by the hiss. He's been overtaken by the hiss, but unlike the other people that are affected by the hiss, they're just like floating, they're chanting, whatever, and he's doing that as well. But he seems to have like retained a part of himself, and he still interacts with you and talks to you, and you get like a little bit more information about the hiss in a way, not really, but just like a bit. So kind of anticlimactic, but it also gives like a face and like a voice to this thing that you've been hearing and seeing throughout the game so far. So I thought it was interesting in that way. But yeah, I mean, we've pretty much met like the whole cast of characters in the game at this point. Like, you've met Emily, you've met Trench, Dr. Darling, Dylan, a few others, like you mentioned, Marshall. There's, I think, Langston in the security sector who gives you a lot of quests. How did you feel about the roles the characters were playing in the story at this point? Are you like connecting to them? Are you identifying with our protagonists? Like, how did you feel?
Dude, I didn't connect with any of the main characters in this game, to be completely honest with you. Like, I didn't care about Dylan. There, I said it. I didn't really give a shit. I didn't. Like, the game doesn't make a connection, between you and Dylan. They don't attempt it, at least. Like, yes, I should care that my brother was kidnapped or whatever, and that I need to save him. I mean, that's literally the goal of why we're here. But I don't really care. That felt anticlimactic, like you said, when I met him, and he is like so far gone, that like in the moment I didn't really care about him. Emily Pope, Marshall, the others, Arish, I didn't really care about any one of them either. I think we were talking in the Discord that like something happens to Marshall, and I didn't even know that something happened to Marshall because I wasn't even seeking it. Like, I didn't really care about them. What I cared about was what I was experiencing. Like, I cared so much about the moment to moment in control, and that's what was keeping me going. It's almost like they perfectly crafted a world that is meant to be explored. And I did that. I was like, hell yeah, I'm exploring this world, and that's what I care about. The people and all of the documents in it, I cared about so much less. I was like, they're just here to point me in different places. Okay, thanks. I'm going to go experience that.
Yeah.
I think the only two people that I really liked were Dr. Underhill. I really the conversations with her and that side mission, like, I really appreciated. And then Langston, who is the Panopticon, like, kind of like security officer or whatever. He's just like a bizarre dude, but I really liked the Panopticon in general in that area of the game. And I wanted to do that side quest, with the fridge and Phil and everything. I thought that was really cool. You fight this like big kind of boss called Former. So, I was really into that, So if the characters were giving me side quests, hell yeah, I'm excited about it. If the characters were main quest characters, to be honest, didn't really care.
I think that's valid. I felt pretty much the same way. Like, I think the thing you noted that I really agree with is how the game doesn't really develop the relationship between Jesse and Dylan to the point where you feel like you care. Like, I think they kind of assume that just because you're the protagonist and it's her brother, that immediately forms an emotional connection, right? Like, of course you want to work. Of course you want to rescue your brother. Of course.
Yeah.
But the problem is,
but I know my brother.
Like, yeah, right, exactly. I don't know Dylan. I don't know this guy.
I don't know him. I don't know
the game, and the game doesn't do enough to like form the connection that you need to feel that way. And when you meet Dylan, he's like, you know, weird, and he's infected with the hiss, and it's like he's babbling the same gibberish that everyone else is babbling, and it's like, I mean, I don't know. I don't care. I don't really care. I don't really care.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the game does, like, it keeps you involved because of all the stuff going on in the background and all of the different side quests and stuff you're experiencing. I think maybe this is a good time to talk about the lore in the game and how the lore in the game is delivered. So one of the primary methods that the developers use to convey lore, you mentioned it a little bit earlier through the tape recordings, but it's through these found documents. It's through these memos that you find all over the place. It's through the documents. It's through phone calls that you get through the hotline. That is the main way that the game tells the lore, not really the story necessarily, but the lore of the world. So in order to like really feel like you have an understanding of what's going on in this world, you have to read a lot of documents and listen. Yeah. If you're a member of the Video Game Book Club community, you know there are some accusations. JP's putting his hands up. You know there's some accusations that we do not like reading. Specifically JP. JP specifically does not like reading in video games. So JP, I'm going to give you the floor right now. How did you feel about the majority of the lore of this game being delivered in that way?
I always have to defend myself. I like reading outside of video games. You know, I love reading books or comics and manga, but I just don't want to read in video games. I just don't want to do it. So I struggle with it. I struggled with all of the documentation that you find. I think I got an achievement at some point that I found like more than 150 documents. Right. I mean, that's a ton.
Yeah.
The ones that I enjoyed the most were the recordings because you can just play them and you listen to them while you keep playing the game. You're almost like listening to a little bit of a podcast while you play the game. And I loved that because I was really interacting with that. And I was like, oh, that was really interesting. And the game does such a good job with all of the voice acting and every single character being voiced and, the FMV that they do with Dr. Darling and Trench, that I was like, just do a little bit more of that. Like, do more recordings and give me the ability to just keep playing your game that I really enjoy and that I really like playing. Like, the moment to moment is good. And that way I will, if you really want me to learn the lore, I'll learn a little bit more about it. But I completely understand that they have to make that optional. They have to make it reading, because can you imagine if someone does not like that and they just are playing the game with 150 different voice memos that they have to listen to while they play the game? I mean, that would cut a little bit into the tension like we were talking about, because the visual and audio representation of the game is so strong. So I understand that that's not the right solution, but it's a solution for me. Other than that, though, there's a lot of visual lore as well, and I enjoyed that way more. Right. We're about to talk about this section of the game, but Ati gives you a cassette player. And when you go get this cassette player from Ati, you're like in like a super bizarre part of the oldest house. But honestly, every part of the oldest house is weird. And I was looking around because I love to look around. I love to explore. I love to go and check every nook and cranny in games. And I found this etch, and it was an etch of a tree. And the tree looked really interesting. And so I was like, well, that's interesting to me. I want to know more about that tree. And so I looked it up. I was like, etch of the tree in Control. And I found a lot of information about it. And obviously part of it was like, oh, this document, if you read it, it talks a little bit about how the oldest house is basically one of the branches of the world tree from Norse mythology. Oh. And that like they make that correlation, and that tree represents that connection to the world tree in Norse mythology. And I was like, wow, that's really cool and that's really interesting. And like Ati seemingly is like, maybe, like the protector or like the guide of the world tree. And I'm like, wow, Ati just became like so much more interesting. I mean, he was already very interesting, but even more so because of this little visual lore that I found. I will 100% say that this is on me. I mean, if I had read all of these documents, then maybe I would have made that connection myself. But I enjoyed finding these things more if they were represented visually, and if they were represented in an auditory way, not if they were represented in a text way, to be honest.
Yes, I agree with that 1000%. I think I have no problem with written lore in video games. I, like you, enjoy the written medium, okay? I'm beating the allegations right now. Yeah. I enjoy the written medium. We read. I talked about a book 30 minutes ago.
Ben has a PhD, brother had to read,
Right. That's a fact. I like the written medium fine, okay? But the thing, the overwhelming thing I felt while playing the game is video games are a interactive visual medium, right? I think the core like concepts of the game, these objects of power, these altered world events, they're very like SCP, if you're familiar with SCP, where SCP is this like whole lore mythology, essentially internet mythology, where it's like essentially exactly what objects of power and AWEs are in this game. They're like normal things that kind of have paranormal things attached to them, essentially. And it's all SCPs are all delivered in like written articles, basically. Very, very similar to what we get in the game. The thing though is that like we're playing a video game, we're playing an interactive visual medium. It's so much more effective in this game to show rather than tell, right? That's the thing you hear all the time in movies, in shows, in visual things. Show, don't tell. And it's like there are moments in the game where it does that. Like you mentioned, the refrigerator quest is a really good example of that. There's some other side quests in the game where it's very interactive and it's very you're actually interacting with these objects of power, with these altered world events in really interesting visual interactive ways. And those are great. But the overwhelming majority of the way you learn about and interact with these things is just through these written articles. And when you're first starting the game, it's interesting and you're reading all the documents and it's like, wow, I really want to learn more about this. But as it goes on, as you're reading your 200th memo about a random object of power that you never see in the game, that you never hear about again outside of this one memo, it's just like, I don't really care at this point. Like, it's fluff. It's fluff at this point. If it were a side quest where I'm like seeing the thing physically, I'm witnessing how weird it is. I'm witnessing the way it interacts with people. That'd be so much better. But like, if you're just reading a 1-page article about this, object of power or altered world event for the 200th time, at a certain point, I opened it up, I skimmed it, and I closed it. I was like, I don't really care. I just want to get back to the game at this point. So that was like the overwhelming opinion I had, was like, I feel like there's a missed opportunity. And I get it. They can't, they load so much lore into the game through these documents in a much easier to do manner. It's much easier for a developer to just write up a little memo than it is to animate and like fully program a sequence in the game. I understand that, but I felt like there could have been more showing and less telling was the overwhelming thing I felt.
That's a good point. So whenever we announced that we were going to play Control for Video Game Book Club, we usually go to each video game subreddit and just say a little announcement to, hey, we're playing this game. If y'all have anything tips and tricks to tell us, like, let us know. And one of the things that they said was like, you're gonna read a lot and there's gonna be a lot of memos, but honestly, you don't need to focus on them. And what you need to do is, if you find, like, it'll give you a title of what the memo will be whenever you pick up that document. And if the title is interesting, then read it. And if it's not interesting to you, then whatever. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
By the end of the game, you find memos and documents that are really important to Jesse, to Dylan, to what you're about to discover in the end game. But by then, like Ben said, that's your 200th memo that you pick up. So you have this fatigue of memos and this like backlog of, in my case, 145 memos that I had not opened because I only opened the first like 40, that I don't want to open it. I like didn't really want to do it. Like I was like, I know this is really important, but I don't want to break from my moment to moment gameplay.
Yeah.
Because right now I'm like in the climax of the game. So no, thank you. I'm not going to read this, And so, but again, listen, you can experience this game really well without reading the documents. Sure. The documents will give you more lore and you'll understand the world a little bit better. But honestly, I kind of find that there's a beauty in not really understanding FPC and the oldest house in general, because it is meant to be paranormal and supernatural. And like, there's not like, you can't really like understand those things fully. That's like why they are supernatural and paranormal, So I think it's cool. It's cool to not know. Hey guys, it's fucking cool to not know things sometimes. All right, just that's my my little lesson of the day.
Love that.
But speaking of gameplay to gameplay, I kind of wanted to talk about the progression system of the game.
Yes,
so we haven't talked too much about like combat and how Jesse kind of like evolves as an RPG protagonist. Okay, so you have the object of power that is the director's gun. And the director's gun actually takes form of different guns as you play the game. You unlock different forms for this object of power. I think about 5 maybe. And each of them have a modifier, up to 3 modifiers that you can add to the gun. And the modifiers, for example, you have one that is like works like a shotgun. And there's a modifier where it's like all your pellets, instead of being like super scattered, they'll kind of like be a little bit more precise and concise. Okay, cool. That's a great little modifier. And it says, scatter minus 15%. And you're like, God, again with the percentages, like that's not super fun. Then you find like, damage plus 45. You find like precision for like your rifle or your like assault rifle modifier that you have, plus 45 precision. You have like reload speed plus 20 or whatever. All of these things you find as you play the game. Or there's a little bit of like a gacha system in the game, obviously without any money, where you can craft a random modifier for your weapons using like the resource material that is the most prevalent in the game, which is called source material. And by using this resource, then you can get a random modifier. If you upgrade that gacha system more and more, then the modifier that you get, that it will still be random, but it'll be at a higher level. Okay, cool. So you can do that. But Jessie also finds a lot of boxes of power, which Ben briefly mentioned earlier, that give her more abilities. So she can levitate. She has a shield. Then she can kind of like break the shield. And when she breaks the shield, it like shatters around and hits everyone. When you levitate, you can also unlock like a slam. And so you go up and then you slam down and you hit the enemies. You have your launch ability, which launches objects or enemies at other enemies. And it deals a lot of damage. That's the best ability. Sure. Obviously, you have your gun. You have energy because everything costs stamina. You can seize enemies. Oh my God. You can literally, when an enemy is in low health, you can like basically control them a little bit and make them allies instead. And then they turn around and then hit other people. So all of these systems are in play. But wait, there's more. Jessie also levels up her ability points when she does main quests, side quests, or when she finds hidden locations. Then this opens up a skill tree that Jessie has, where she can like increase all of her abilities, damage or pool by a little bit. So like, obviously you can increase her health. She can increase her like launch damage output, or her levitate slam damage output, or how long she can levitate, or how fast she can seize enemies, and so on and so forth. That is a lot of systems for a kind of like third-person shooter game that is, I want to say simple, but effective. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. I think they add too many things. You already have an overwhelming amount of collectibles that are your documents and stuff. But then they add these weapon modifiers for all your weapons that, to be honest with you, didn't feel super substantial until I found like the level 5 and level 6 modifiers in the late game.
Exactly.
So that felt really good. And so my suggestion to the game is that I would have rather no modifiers, no weapon modifiers, and no Jessie modifiers. She also has personal mods that she can add. But why have a personal mod when I already have a skill tree? I have a skill tree. I have ability points. Like skill trees in video games, again, I go back to Final Fantasy X. Best skill tree that you can have because it opens up 100,000 possibilities of where you can go, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you want to complete the skill tree. You can just go towards what you like. In this way, you can kind of like, hey, I really like the gunplay in Control. So I want to kind of focus on the gunplay. So instead of modifiers, you go to your control points and you spend your ability points to making your gunplay better by adding the percentages there. If you want to just do a percentage-based game for progression, that's cool. But you can do that in the skill tree instead of the other stuff. Because at some point in the game, I wanted the launch ability to be good. But I wasn't seizing anyone and I wasn't using the shield. So then I was like, well, I have nothing else to use my ability points in. So sure, I'll get more health. Why not? But I didn't really care about that. I would have much rather, I was using the gun so much. All the guns. Like I was like really just pop, 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 pop. So I would have rather be able to use my ability points to increase that because to me, that was more fun. Now, someone who struggles with third-person shooters or I don't know, or just they want to do a more defensive gameplay, yeah, put your ability points in shield. But at some point, you're going to find that still you have so many ability points that, okay, yeah, you'll get more health, more energy, and you'll complete your skill tree. But like, why complete the skill tree if you're just going to give me little skill tree? Give me big skill tree so I can go everywhere. So I don't know. I just didn't think it worked perfectly, but I did think that the combat and the gameplay was really good. So it's like you have a really, really, really good gameplay, but just your progression system for that gameplay just like was not entirely like super crafted. And I'm looking forward to, the sequel of the game is coming out this year. And I kind of want to see how they develop that in a better way.
Yeah, the way I felt about it was like, I think you touched on something that I found really important, which is that there was the mid-game progression was very, very uninspired. It was like little percentages, it's flat health, it's, 10% gun damage. Awesome. Gain 20 health points. Great. Love that. Very fun. Love that. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change physically what you're doing. The mid-game progression I felt was like very, very boring. It was very uninspired. But the end game progression I thought was great. I thought it was really, really good. That is where you get deeper into the skill tree and you get actual interesting, meaningful upgrades. When you grab an item, you can grab multiple items instead of one to launch at the enemies instead of just the one. You can seize more enemies at the same time. You can do all sorts of interesting, like you mentioned, the shield. You get an upgrade to the shield where it explodes after you're done using it and stuff like that. Those are interesting. Those change the way you play the game. They feel good to unlock and use. But there's this whole 80% of the game, I would say, honestly, where the upgrades are just not material. They're just like percentages in the background that you don't feel, that you don't experience in the game-to-game, in the moment-to-moment gameplay. So I thought that was disappointing. But like I said, you get to the end, you unlock all this stuff, and now it feels super powerful. It feels super impactful. And that, I think, is where the progression in the combat hits its stride. But I wish it would have been a little more evenly spread out, getting more interesting abilities throughout the game instead of just right at the end, when you're close to done, basically. So I also was a little disappointed in that. Yeah.
Yeah, it just adds to the inventory management too. It's like, do you want me to play the game or do you want me to be in the menu? There's also a cap on how many modifiers you have on your weapon, but you are given a choice if you want to pick them up or not. As you walk through around and you like pick up source material, which you need, you also automatically pick up weapon modifiers. And holy shit, you pick up level 1 weapon modifiers when you're like in the level 5s. You're like, why would I ever want this? So you just have to spend, and then you can't pick up the level 5 weapon modifiers because your inventory is full. So you go to the menu and then you like clear out your entire menu, basically your entire inventory, so that you can collect more garbage, you know? And it's just like,
not feel good.
Let me not collect garbage. Let me put my ability points into my weapons and then not think about garbage collection, please, you know?
Yeah. Totally agree. Okay.
I wanted to bring up the side quests too in this game.
Sure, go for it.
So you said that the mid-game section kind of has, you know, it's a little bit underwhelming in the kind of game progression, but it's incredibly super whelming. No, it's incredibly great in the side quest. So once you finally get Dylan, and Dylan is like, you know, in his little tube, the game opens up fully. You get level 6 clearance, and so you can actually investigate the whole oldest house without any worry at this point. Because of that, you are given all of the side quests right now. And it's, you know, we see this a lot in gaming. It's a way of the game saying, hey, the game's about to end. You're about to go to your last mission. You can do all of your side quests now if you'd like, or, you know, if you want, you can do them later. In this game's case, sometimes sometimes the game is over and then you can't do anything more, so you should do them now. And I just felt that exploring the oldest house with the side quests was just so much more fun, and the side quest stories in general of, you know, random characters or the same cast of characters, but like that are not focused on the hiss, but are focused on like, hey, this is happening, can you go check that out, was really, really effective, and I really liked it. Now, a member of the Discord has asked us what our favorite side mission is, so I'm going to leave that for part 2. But one little bit of like a comparison that I wanted to make to another video game book club game is Rain World. Now, in Rain World, you play this game and you are in this ecology that you want to learn, and an ecology that's really interesting. But half of the battle too is that you kind of want to learn how Slugcat, the protagonist, is moving around and how it works. In Control, you don't really need to do that. You don't need to know how Jessie works. She works, you know. But what you want to figure out how it works is the oldest house. And you want to see the oldest house. You want to experience the oldest house. And in Rain World, you stumble across, like, you have no idea what the whole point of Rain World is and where you're going to end up and the like god creatures that you're going to find. And it's kind of similar to me as Control. Like, you stumble upon these crazy things in the oldest house that are really interesting. So I had that same sense of wonder and want for exploration in Control as in Rain World. Both games are Metroidvanias, or Metroidvania Lights, if you want to call them that. I don't know. And it's really, really interesting how both of those are so effective and they're so, so different, you know? So I don't know. I just wanted to make that comparison.
No, I love that. All right. We are now at the point where this is our official spoiler warning. You know, of course, we talked about a lot of details of the game so far. But this is, you know, we're going to talk about the end game, the late game, how the story wraps up. So if you have not played or finished Control and you want to do so, this would be a great time to pause and come back to after you've done so. But otherwise, we are going to get into it now. So, JP, we talked about, we found Dylan, and Dylan essentially wants you to understand the role of the Bureau in this story, basically, because we know Dylan was kidnapped, but that's about it. So Dylan tells you to go somewhere in the Bureau and investigate the Ideal Candidate program. So you don't really know what that is, but once you get there, essentially what you learn is that Dylan, once he was taken from Ordinary with Jessie, the Bureau basically identified him as an ideal candidate to take over as the director of the Bureau. So, you know, because I guess primarily because he had this really intimate experience with an object of power and with an altered world event as a child, they think, you know, great, he's perfect to take over. We're going to groom him to take over the Bureau. And essentially what that looks like is they kind of try to give him more and more power. They try to develop the abilities that he's kind of gaining through these objects of power and altered world events. And as he grows more and more powerful, he's growing more and more unstable. And the Bureau recognizes that. And of course, it comes to a head where he kills an agent of the Bureau, like I think you referred to earlier. So the Bureau is essentially at this point, like, not going to work. He's not, don't think he's going to take over as director. Let's move to our next candidate, which is Jesse. So what you learn going through the Ideal Candidate Program area is that basically the Bureau has been stalking Jessie for her whole life at this point. There's pictures up of her just walking around on the street. There's all sorts of memos, of course, that you find detailing their, surveillance of Jessie. Jessie thought she was like going crazy essentially because she kind of felt, that feeling you get where you can tell you're being watched, but you don't know where it's coming from. She had that, and she thought she was going crazy basically, but it's true. She was being watched and surveilled all this time. So now the Bureau essentially turns their sights to her to become the ideal candidate. Of course, Jessie's here now, and so her focus, like we talked about, is finding the projector. We know about the projector. We know what happened in Ordinary at this point in the game. And Jessie kind of determines that, we know at this point, we find out that the hiss came from the projector. The hiss, I think we might not know at this point how that occurred, but we know that somebody put a slide in the projector, and from that slide came the hiss. So Jessie kind of knows. The slide projector
is basically like opens portals to other worlds, depending on what slide you put into the projector. And so one of them contained the hiss, and one of them contained Polaris too. So that's how all of these beings are being are entering into our world through the slide projector.
Exactly. So Jessie determines that in order to defeat the hiss and hopefully save her brother who's infected by it, she needs to find the projector and she needs to shut it down. She needs to turn it off, similar to how she did when they were children and the slide projector was destroying their whole town. She has to find it. She has to turn it off. Of course, to find the slide projector is a issue in and of itself, and it's hidden behind what's called the ashtray maze. So I would say the ashtray maze is like one of the big set pieces within the game. It's like a huge set piece where
it's the peak.
It's the peak. Yeah, it's the peak. You access it, you get there, and it seems like a pretty normal labyrinth. You're starting to go through it. The walls are kind of changing. It's shifting. You don't know how to get through. But Ati kind of contacts you and is like, hey, to get through the ashtray maze, I'll help you. Come find me and I'll help you. So this is where you go into the depths of the FBC and the oldest house, basically. And it's where you find that etching that you mentioned earlier. And it's where Ati gives you his cassette player. So you go back to the ashtray maze and put the headset on, and this is a good part to mention the music, because the music kicks in at this point, and it's like this death metal, basically. This Finnish death metal kicks in. The ashtray maze totally changes, and you're able to make your way through it, and it becomes this endless, maze of these rooms that are shifting and these agents that are coming from you in all directions. All the while, there's this crazy death metal in your ears that you're hearing as you're fighting through. It's crazy. How did you find the ashtray maze, JP?
The ashtray maze was my favorite level in this game, and it honestly has become one of my favorite levels in gaming in general.
Oh wow!
The music kind of I don't know how they did this on purpose, how many play tests they needed to do this to make it so that as you move through the maze more and more, the progression of the song just increases and increases and increases until it's so climactic by the end. And I don't know if it happens organically or not, but it's just so good. That all the different rooms that you experience just kind of goes along with the music. I think what is really interesting about this maze is that it's almost like you're in like a house of cards. And that's kind of like the vibe that, like literally like a house made of cards, let's call it. The vibe of how everything shifts. Like the cassette player is an object of power that is letting you get through this maze. And it knows what the path you should take is by it shifting the walls for you. So you don't actually have to like memorize anything. The cassette player is telling you where to go by opening these walls for you. But the way that the walls shift, it's almost like cards falling out of like a house of cards or something. The cool thing about the ashtray maze is that like it's just one hallway. It's an endless hallway and it's like hallways of doors, but it has a wallpaper. That wallpaper is like, etched into my brain forever because of how much I saw it, but how much it's so effective in like making it seem so like bizarre and loopy. And at some point you don't know what's up, what's down, what's left, what's right, because you're walking on the ceiling, you're walking on the walls, the floor is in front of you. Wait, now there's no floor, now it's all doors, now it's all wallpaper, and all of that as you go through it. And there's enemies in there and stuff like that, so there's a little bit of also combat that happens. But it's I think no one can play this game without talking about the ashtray maze. It's such a good experience, and it's a really, really good level.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and it's the ultimate example of showing rather than telling, right? It's so much more effective to be in the ashtray maze, to see how it's interacting and feel being in it, through all these interactions you're having as the player, as opposed to picking up a document and reading about the ashtray maze, right? Like how much different is that? But incredible gameplay element, obviously I think like you said, climax of the game, probably one of the best moments in the game. You make it through the ashtray maze to where the ordinary altered world event, essentially you find the Bureau has this like scale replica of the town of Ordinary that they're kind of using to investigate it. And you reach where the slide projector is supposed to be, and it's not there. It's been taken and moved by someone, and you don't know who. So you move, you go back to, I'm not sure if I think it's in the research sector. You go back to the research sector. And you find Darling's laboratory, like where his laboratory is. And through that, you start learning more about Darling developed these devices that he called the Hedron resonance amplifiers. And you don't really know what those are, but it's these devices that all the agents that have not been corrupted by the Hiss are wearing on their chest. So when you find Darling's laboratory, you start reading, of course, a little more about that and that process. And you find that there's this entity, Hedron, that Darling found in the slide projector. I think one of the slides he found, maybe in the same slide that Polaris came from, I think is what happened. And within that, he brought Hedron into this world. So he brought Hedron, and it's being kept behind this giant door. So Jessie, I guess, determines somehow, I don't really remember what her motivation for doing it was, that she needs to access Hedron. Yeah. So you get past this giant door, and of course you open it up, and what happens? Of course, the Hiss gets in, and it infiltrates Hedron, and it starts attacking Hedron, which is this like giant floating polygon, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the Hiss starts attacking it. So you go through this huge like gameplay moment where you're flying all around this chamber that Hedron's being kept in. You're defeating the Hiss. You're defeating all of it, but it's too late. Eventually, it's too late. The bearings holding Hedron in place kind of fall away, and it's empty, and Hedron is gone. And with Hedron gone, the Hiss now corrupts Jessie, and there's this moment
because Polaris is gone as well from Jessie's mind.
Yeah, that's one thing we kind of learned through exploring Darling's laboratory as well, is that Hedron was essentially the source of Polaris's power in this world. So with Hedron now gone, Polaris cannot protect Jessie, and the Hiss corrupts her finally, and the credits roll. JP, I mean, what are you feeling at this point?
Bro,
What were you feeling at this point in the game?
As soon as that happened, I messaged the Discord and I said, "What the fuck?" I was like, "That's it?" Question mark. Like that's how the game ends. And immediately I get like 5 or 6 messages in a row that are like, "Wait, 1 more second." And then I'm like, and I'm looking at my second screen, and I'm not looking at the credits rolling. And I'm looking at the second screen. I'm like, "What the hell? Wait, what do they mean?" And then I look back at my game, and then the credits are rolling, but they start also becoming really bizarre. And they start kind of like, honestly, I was like, I feel like I'm tripping a little bit with how like the credits were kind of like almost like melting in front of you. And all of these words, like nonsensical stuff, started like filling up the screen. And then you wake up and Jessie is like in a illusion world where she is a worker at the FBC, like a low level worker, and she just has to do these mundane tasks like picking up coffee mugs and delivering people their mail, while people tell her, really like mean things, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely.
How did you feel that those credits rolled up?
I mean, it's interesting because the game like really lets you sit with it. Like you said, like the whole thing with the credits doesn't happen for a few minutes, honestly. Like the credits roll and you're just sat there watching them, and it lets you sit there and sit in that feeling for a while before it gives you any kind of indication that it's kind of a ruse. So at first I was like, that's really disappointing. Like that's a super lame end to the game. And I was like, it lets you sit with it to the point where I think at first I was like, this can't be the end. Like there's something happening, but it lets you sit there for so long that I was like, damn, like, I guess that is the end of the game. Like that's kind of really disappointing. Like, I don't know. And I was like starting to kind of get on Google to search like Control ending to like see what other people thought of it. And then I looked back and saw what's happening with the credits and, waking up in the FBC again like that. But yeah, I thought it was super funny that they did that and super interesting. So yeah, pretty good.
But then Jessie is in this time loop basically, and then with the help of Ati, who is always on by your side and telling you like, hey, keep going, try again. And then Darling. So you see Trench a lot as like, when you pick up the hotline, the phone, you start seeing Trench kind of like speak to you through, I don't know, your kind of like shared power. Mm-hmm. But now you start seeing Darling do the same thing, which is the first time that we see him do this.
Yeah.
And basically they help her figure out that she can escape the illusion by going to the Ocean View Motel, which is kind of like a world between worlds a little bit. Yeah. You use the Ocean View Motel a lot to traverse to different like, I don't know, just different altered worlds.
It's this locations. It's a recurring theme. It's a recurring like element in the game where basically, like you said, it's a world between worlds, and essentially the way it functions is like you hit a dead end or what seems like a dead end, but there's a way you can access the Ocean View Motel through that. So you go to this Ocean View Motel, which is like a super Twilight Zone. It's bizarre. There's like a radio playing this like like elevator music basically, but it's like warped and it sounds weird and everything's dark. And you have to, every time you go to the Ocean View Motel, you have to solve like a little puzzle. And they're very simple. Like they don't, there's not a lot of brain power involved, honestly. But you solve the puzzle and go back to the bureau, and essentially after coming back, whatever happened in your traversal between worlds there, the path forward is now open. Basically, that's kind of how the Ocean View Motel works. But it seems like there's more to it, essentially. And so now, like you're saying, you access the Ocean View Motel through this kind of time loop that you're caught in, and you find Polaris there in the Ocean View Motel. You find Polaris. So Hedron is gone. The source of Polaris's power in this world is gone. But through finding Polaris in the Ocean View Motel, Jessie sort of becomes the new conduit for Polaris in this world. So she is now the source of power for Polaris. And you're kind of amplified in that. Basically,
Yeah.
all of your combat abilities are amplified.
Everything.
The energy you use is super amplified. You can levitate for longer. You can shoot for longer. You can dash around so much quicker. You're like
This
super
is kind of
Jesse
like
at that point.
like Jesse when she gets to the Ocean View Motel, Jesse like takes the red pill, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, the red pill, yeah.
Right.
She takes the red pill, she wakes up finally because she has a little piece of dialogue that she says something like, well, if I can like access different places with the Ocean View Motel, maybe I can choose where, like which point I want to access. Whereas before, you're just a passenger. You go to the Ocean View Motel, the Ocean View Motel takes you where it wants you to go. Whereas now, just it's like, no, I can decide where I want to go. And she like wakes up, and this is how she becomes super powerful. She gets Polaris back with her. All of her abilities are elevated, like Ben says, and then you basically go to your last little fight, your last. Which, hey, I have a thing to say.
Okay.
There's no big final bad in this game.
Yeah.
Where is my
true.
big monster fight to finish the game? They gave us a lot of these fights throughout the game. We had to fight like Salvatore, for example, or other like kind of like high and mighty people in the FBC that are corrupted by the hiss, and they become like a big bad boss. But you don't really find one at the end of this game, which I don't know. I just found interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. You're totally right about that. I mean, the big final battle that you're referring to is this like very epic kind of traversal. There's like mini bosses, I would say, in each. You're kind of jumping. You're in this like astral plane. You're jumping from island to island. And each time there's like more and more enemies, and of course you're super Jesse at this point. So
you're super Jesse. You kill them really quickly. Yeah, that's true.
But no, you're 100% right. There's no big bad. I think one thing that's important to note is that we get kind of before this final battle, the last kind of lore drop that you get in this final segment is that Trench was the person who allowed the hiss into this world.
Right.
So there was this kind of internal power struggle going on within the Bureau, basically, where Trench was the director, but Dr. Darling, was discovering Hedron and developing these Hedron resonance amplifiers. And Trench was kind of put off by that, or he was wary of it. He kind of felt like by discovering Hedron and utilizing its power and all of this stuff, he felt like Darling was attempting to take over the agency. So Trench was becoming like super paranoid, super kind of, distrustworthy. And in kind of a final moment of weakness, I guess, he brought back the slide projector and put in one of the burned slides. And through opening that slide, opening the portal to whatever world, that allowed the hiss into our world, and is basically, so that's kind of the source of the hiss in this game. We finally know why it's here, how it got here. Of course, when he does that, Trench is, corrupted himself, and I think maybe he knows he's being corrupted by the hiss, which is why he ultimately kills himself in that moment, to kind of prevent that further. But that's kind of the last big lore drop in the game, is that moment. And now, of course, we're in the final battle. We're moving from island to island. We're super Jesse. We're killing all the enemies. And of course, the final moment is you reach Dylan. You reach him at the end of this level. You cleanse him of the hiss. And he falls kind of into a sort of coma. That's kind of the end. That's really kind of the end of the game. After that, you wake up again in the Bureau, and Jessie is in like a new outfit. She looks like super corporate. She's got like the power suit on. Her hair is kind of done up. And you get the sense that she is now, previously you're the director, right? Obviously, but it was kind of in name only. People were like, oh, you're the director. And Jessie was like, if you say so. Now you get the sense that she is the director. She's the director of the Bureau. She fulfills that role. She sees herself in that role. And from there, the game is kind of just like, great, you won. You can continue fighting the hiss if you want. Like, it's still, we haven't fully eradicated the hiss yet. So, feel free to keep exploring and keep doing that. And you're like, okay, whatever. But that's the end of the game. That's the end of the game, JP. How did that ending kind of strike you when you were playing through it?
I think that's good. I mean, I feel like as you play the game, you start making your own like assumptions of, who is Polaris? What is actually up with Dylan? What happened to Trench? Am I ever going to meet Darling? And I don't think I ever landed on this ending, like I actually thought that Polaris was bad, and I was like, maybe Polaris is bad. And then, we think that Polaris, she's playing the long game. She's been inside of Jesse's mind for like 17 years. And finally, she's going to get what she wants. And I remember when I walked into like where Hedron is, I was like, is that like all the hiss is attacking it? But I kind of thought the hiss was like merging with it, because they just kind of like are like flying and just like, kind of like striking it and like kind of like hugging it like that. And I was like, maybe Hedron wanted the hiss for himself to become like all powerful. And I was so confused, to be honest. So I didn't really like, I was going through so many different like options in my brain of what was happening. I figured that, I remember I talked to one of our Discord members who Dillypig, whose favorite game is Control. And I was just like, I don't know if the board is good. And I don't know if like FPC in general is good. And I don't think Trench is good. Like a good, person, I guess, whatever in the whole lore of the game. And he was like, finish the game and then talk to me, And then obviously like, I don't know if Trench ultimately is good or bad. Obviously he did a bad thing. I don't know if he's good or bad because of it. But the board clearly like isn't like, good in general, like because the FPC has so much access to power, then by that you will always generally end up in a way where someone is going to abuse all of that power that is in their hands, and something like this will happen, which is a crisis that you need to solve. I mean, listen, I think that obviously you're trying to find Dylan the whole time. So cleansing Dylan and him being like saved is a good ending, I would say. Something that you expect that will happen. And, at this point it was satisfactory to me because it was like a good ending point to the game. I still don't have like a strong connection to Dylan. And then Dylan goes immediately into a coma. So you kind of don't have another sense of closure with finding him, So the ending, while epic, through the Astray Maze, through like the Astral Plane fights, without the big boss, but that's okay. It was epic, but I think the story itself was like generally underwhelming to me. Yeah, not the lore. The world is incredible. The story that Jesse's doing is like underwhelming. The lore is amazing, Yeah. It's just a big difference.
Yeah. Super. Yeah. Valid. I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. I think it was, the thing I didn't like about the ending was that there are so many loose ends. Like there's so many loose ends. Like you mentioned, the board, who's this like super ambiguous entity throughout the game that's kind of guiding you, and you don't know if it's good or bad. You don't know what it is. You don't know how it is or what. It's just there. Super open-ended. It feels like there's a lot of loose ends within the game. And honestly, I think a lot of them are tied up in the DLC. So this game has 2 DLCs. Yeah. One is called Altered World Events and one is called Foundation. And I don't know, there's a lot of actual lore to the game, like parts of the story, basically, not just like additions to the story, but parts of the story, like the board, who we just mentioned. A lot of that backstory of the lore and a lot of the lore for the board is in the Foundation DLC. That's where you learn a lot more about the oldest house and the board. And the Altered World Events DLC kind of expands the universe of this game and explains how this game is tied in with the other games like Alan Wake. So there's a ton of like pretty critical story elements that are tied into the story of the game that are in the DLC. So I think there's 2 ways to look at that. Like one, if I were playing this game on release, I would feel like it's kind of incomplete. I would feel like it's kind of like there are some missing elements to it. But now we're kind of at a point where one of the people, Dillypig again in the Discord, made the point that like there is no base game anymore. The game is only sold as the Ultimate Edition, which includes both of the DLCs. So basically, there is no DLC anymore. It's just the game. It's the one game that contains all of it. And I think that's a super fair point. But if you're playing the game, again, putting yourself in the shoes of playing it like on release without this DLC, I might feel like it's a little incomplete. So I know you didn't play the DLC. I played one of them. I played the Altered World Event DLC, and I thought it was really, really good. I thought it was exactly what I wanted in terms of the delivery I thought this game should have. It was so much more showing and so much less telling. Everything you did in it was super visceral. It was super impactful. You were like seeing the things in the game, in the world. You're interacting with them in a very real way. It felt so much less like the base game in terms of all of the lore and stuff being delivered through written text and things like that. It's exactly what I wanted. It's like exactly what I wanted. Wow. And I didn't even really like explore all of it. I would say I played like the mainline quest and the DLC, and I did like a few sub things, but yeah, playing it, I was like, man, I kind of wish there was more of this in the base game. Honestly, like I really do. So yeah, I don't know if I'll return to finishing the other DLC. Are you interested in playing the DLC? Do you see yourself kind of turning to that at all?
I do. Yeah. Spoiler for the second half, but I love this game. I really liked it. And I feel like, do I want to deep dive into like everything about the lore and stuff? I don't really know if I do want to do that. But like as a developer, I trust Remedy to give me a good game, and I experienced that firsthand by playing Control. So Control Resonance coming out, and I want to experience that too. And I know that playing the Foundations DLCs especially is going to be, something that I would want to do before I play Control Resonant. The Alan Wake side of things, Alan Wake 2 is always a game that I've had like in mind for something that I want to play. But just like the thought of having to play like, 2 games plus a DLC to pull that, I just don't have the time right now and space in my brain to do that. I think that just to comment on like the like combo experience that you have with the Ultimate Edition, I mean, I think playing the base game is fine. Like I think playing the base game, if I had played it on release, I wouldn't have any issues. Like I wouldn't be like, oh, there's things that they need to tie up. I was just like, we saw the story. We saw Jesse's story. They crafted a world that is really interesting. And that's it. I mean, we played Expedition 33, and all of Expedition 33 happens in one canvas. And they explained that outside of that canvas, there's like a fucking huge world to experience. And one day maybe they'll release a DLC, or they'll just create a new game to explain what that is. But I played through Expedition 33, and I didn't feel like I needed to learn anything about the writers and the poets or painters and the whoever. It's like, I don't really give a shit. I played the game to experience, oh my God, what's the protagonist?
Maya?
No.
Gustav?
Who
are you talking about?
Gustav. Nothing happens to Gustav. Don't worry. I want to experience that story, and I feel like the base game of Control gives you that. And Dylan's in a coma. Jesse is the director. She says, we stopped the hiss coming in, but there's still a shit ton of hiss in the oldest house. So I'm gonna get to cleansing, and I'm like, hell yeah, do your thing. I experienced that story. I'm happy with it. If people want to deep dive in the lore and, tie up the loose ends, like you say, cool, they can do that. But man, to me, I'm like, I did it,
Fair enough.
Okay. We're going to take a little bit of a break. If you want to be part of all of these discussions that we have, for Video Game Book Club, then you should join Video Game Book Club Discord, which we have the link everywhere in the bio, not in the bio, in the footnote, not in the footnote. If you want to interact with us while we play the game and join in these discussions, I think that's the best place to do it. If you are watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify and iTunes, then don't forget to give us, a little bit of a like and a little bit of a rating. That would be amazing for Ben and I. We will be back in just a couple seconds, and we're going to answer all the questions that our viewers have sent to us through the Video Game Book Club Discord. We'll be right back after this. Welcome to part 2 of the show, where we answer the questions that you have sent to us on the Video Game Book Club Discord. Again, if you want to become a member of Video Game Book Club Discord, you know where to find it. Just follow the link. Click on the link and come hang out. Benny, I'm going to ask the first question. And this one is sent to us by J2Ts on the Discord. And he says, do you think Ahti is a normal janitor, or is he something else?
Yeah, I mean, we touched on this partially. I don't know if there's like a core answer in the game. Like, I don't know that Ahti's kind of one of those loose ends, I feel, that doesn't really get tied up. But yeah, I mean, the game makes so many allusions to Ahti being this like God, pretty much. Like, that's the only way I can describe it. From the very beginning, like we mentioned earlier, like Ahti reads your mind and responds to a thought you're having. So it's like, this guy's got something going on. We find him at the base of the oldest house in the lowest level, and he gives you a magic cassette player that like unfolds this insane labyrinth that lets you through it. There's so many, you find a lot of documents in the game where other employees of the FBC are talking about Ahti, and they're kind of talking about him in a way of like, just avoid him. Like, don't let him do his thing. We don't know what he's doing or how he's doing it. Let him do his thing. Don't mess with Ahti, man. Don't mess with him. So yeah, the game gives you like a very real sense of like him being some sort of entity, and we don't know what that is. We don't know who it is or what it is. Yeah, we don't know what form it takes. But here, he's just the janitor, man. He's the janitor. He's keeping things afloat and helping us out where he can, and that's kind of all we really know. So,
to me, my answer to this question, I have like a theory of it. Wow, my own video game theory. Wow, I need to go on like some threads and stuff. No, to me, Ahti is an extension of the oldest house. He's like a protector and a guide of the oldest house. He's not like a human or alive. He's just like an entity of the oldest house that will kind of like keep the oldest house in some sort of order. And that's why I think when Jesse comes in, the oldest house maybe like knows that Jesse is like the answer to what is disrupting the oldest house right now, which is the hiss. So he's like, finally, you're here, my assistant, my underling or whatever. You need to get to work. And like, he's the one that tells you that first, but because in my eyes, it's the oldest house telling Jesse like, come fix me up. The oldest house, kind of like we talked about, there's allusions that this is like, a branch of the world tree. And I think Ahti is like that god that is protecting it, that is serving it, just to make sure that like nothing happens to it enough that it will get destroyed. But also, he's not like a source of like all good. He's not there to make sure that everything is paradise. No, he's just there to make sure that like everything is guided to a sense of like equilibrium, maybe, but not destruction, which is why, he's not going to step in and kill the hiss. He's going to be like, oh, someone can do that, I'll help them, but usually it's kind of like, not a direct kind of fix to things, but
right.
Yeah.
Right.
What a cool character though.
Super cool character. Definitely have a lot of love for Ahti the janitor for sure. Okay, I have a question. Of course, Dilly Pig is our champion of Control. Loves the game. He was a big reason, a proponent of, lobbying for it to be selected as the April game of the month with the community. So Dilly Pig, of course, has a banger for us for a question.
Banger.
And Dilly Pig asks, you walked into the wrong building and accidentally became director of the FBC. Whoops. Uh-oh.
Whoa.
What now?
Let's go.
You need a head of research, operations, security, containment, and investigations. Don't worry, Ahti's got maintenance under control, of course, as we know. Who are you pulling in? Can be people you know from fictional, people you know in your personal life, wherever you want to take it.
It is such a good question, and I decided to answer it by using characters from games that we have played in video game book club history. So, who is the head of research for me? None other than Benjamin Tizzletoops, the Dr. Toops himself. He is my head of research. If I am the director of the FBC, I need my partner, my main man, a video game book club to be right there with me. And Love dude, that. You are my darling to my trench. You know, you are Love the darling to my trench, baby. We're gonna fight at some point. It's not gonna be pretty, but it's okay. Hopefully, we'll make peace, not like them.
Yeah, just watch our Dark Souls streams if you want to see us fight.
It's banter, guys. We love each other. Okay, we played tennis so much together. You should have seen us out there on the courts. We were in sync all the time. Mm-hmm. My head of operations is Hecate from Hades 2. I just feel like she keeps everything ticking. My honorable mention for this is Pippet's aunt from Pipistrello.
Oh wow,
yeah. I think she would keep everything ticking in a different way for sure. My head of security are the Guardians from Rain World. Do you remember them? Those big Guardians with like the square faces?
I do.
And my honorable mention is the Ghost Dog from Animal Well. Do you remember the ghost dog from Animal Well that chases you around half the map? Bruh, if I am like, that's a good head of security, dude. They will chase you until you're dead.
Yeah, for sure.
And teleport you back to the front, to the entrance immediately. Okay, my head of containment is Mael from Expedition 33. She spends her whole life containing Verso's painting, you know? Yep. So I feel like she does a good job of it. And if not, it'll be Yi from Nine Souls, my honorable mention, because he literally creates a gigantic ship to house all of the soul Larians in the game. I forgot the story, but that's what he does, so that he can, find the cure for the plague. This is one that you'll like. My head of investigations, none other than Kim Kitsuragi from Disco Elysium. I mean, it's gotta be Kim Kitsuragi. Like, come on. He is the best detective around. He is my head of investigations. Honorable mention to Lorelei from Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. But
fair.
Yeah. Who are your heads?
That is a fantastic answer. I love all of those answers.
It was a great question. Thank you, Dilly Pig.
I will go in a different direction. I'm gonna give these titles to people from the Video Game Book Club Discord. Okay.
So, the
of course,
themselves.
if I'm the director, if I'm thrust into that role, my head of research, it's got to be Joe. It's got to be our boy Joe. I mean, he is our Dr. Darling. He's got that smooth voice. If you watched our Jeopardy stream, I could see him in the, infomercial style Dr. Darling videos where he's kind of quirky and explaining things. Has to be Joe as our head of research. Operations, it's got to be Dilly Pig. I mean, it has to be. He's our champion of control. He knows how this thing works. He knows what keeps everything ticking. He is a core component of our Discord in that way as well. So Dilly Pig, he's going to keep things running for us in the background. Security, I got to give it to my boy J2Ts. I mean, he's been dropping some Counter-Strike clips recently, hitting some insane flicks and combos in Counter-Strike and in Valorant. So he's got to be our head of security. Containment, I got to give it to my boy JP. I mean, when I think containment, I think who can best interact with all of the objects of power and all of the altered world events. And JP would just be in there holding court. He would just be, making a scene, laughing with all the objects of power, palling around. He would just be the absolute best in containment. Because no one can hate this guy. I mean, listen, the objects of power, whatever beings are controlling them, they would just be drawn to him. They'd be super chill with JP, so it's got to be. And of course, investigations. I got to give head of investigations to our puzzle game expert herself, Inferno Disco. I mean, that's an obvious one to me. That's an obvious one. Head of investigations has to be Inferno Disco. So those are my heads. Let us know if if you accept this nomination in the comments, if you wish to, and that's who I'm nominating. That's who it's got to be.
That is really good. I like that we both did video game book club related answers, even though we didn't know that we were going to do that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Usually whenever we create our notes for when we answer these questions, I always make a tab on our Google document called secret tab. Do not look at this, Benny. If you look at this, I'm going to give you 1,000 years of bad luck so that he doesn't steal my answers, you know? Yeah. And I don't know if you did or didn't, but that's awesome. Okay, I have the next question. This one is from Sunderu. And Sunderu asks, which object in your house is most likely to be an object of power? And what weird shenanigans has it caused?
Oh boy, yeah. So we kind of partially had this discussion on the most recent episode of The Checkpoint, which is our kind of mid-month check-in podcast for the game of the month. And on that episode, I think I said my object of power was my pizza oven, and you said yours was the one pan that you use to make everything that creates super good meals. Kind of similar to those things, I'm going to say my object of power is my chef's knife. I've got a really nice Japanese chef knife. Oh. I got the whetstone that I use to keep that bad boy razor sharp, and it is definitely an object of power just in the precision, in the precision of the cuts, in the sharpness of the blade. It's the sharpest blade on this planet. That's not true, but its ability to cut through things is absolutely unmatched. That would be my object of power. And the shenanigans that's caused would definitely be the couple times I've almost lost a fingertip, I would say, for sure, while cooking and cutting. A little slip of the knife can, with a knife that sharp, can spell some bad things. So it's caused a few shenanigans for sure. A few almost trips to the ER that thankfully did not need to be. But yeah, it's caused a few shenanigans for sure.
I like that answer, Benny. My object of power that lives in my house is my Roomba. My Roomba robot.
That's a good one.
Brother, my Roomba robot. Listen, the thing is, I think it smells when the house is in harmony. It knows when the house is in harmony. I have that thing running 3 times a week on a schedule. Cleans the house very nicely. Thank you very much. But, every so often, it'll pick up an item as if it is sentient. It'll pick up a charger. It'll pick up maybe AirPods. Somehow they fell on the floor. And then the Roomba will just kind of take it with it and put AirPods or someone's charger from our nightstand all the way to under the couch. And you're like, how the hell did this happen? And then Katie's like, hey, did you use my charger? I'm like, no, I didn't use my charger. Maybe you misplaced it. It's like, I always leave my charger right here. And I'm like, I haven't seen the charger, And just 5 minutes before, we were in complete harmony. And the Roomba knows how to disrupt that. Yeah. And then we go on a hunt. Where the hell is the charger? Finally we find it. And I'm like, it's got to be the Roomba. It's got to be the Roomba. But it's not just that, Benny. I don't know how it does it. And I don't know if you have a motorized sentient robot in your house. But every time it bumps into like a desk or something. I have 2 cats. And my cats never do the typical cat thing of like hitting something off of a shelf or a desk or a table. They don't care. They're chill like that. But my Roomba, it will hit the dining room table hard enough that will knock something and then just grab it and run with it. I swear, dude. There's something going on, and then we find things everywhere. And it causes chaos.
That is for sure an object of power. You're 100% right about that. It's a really good answer. All right, I've got our next question, Inferno Disco. So she's got 3 questions, so we'll kind of go in order here. First one for you, because you were the side mission boy, so I feel like it's only right that I ask you, what was your favorite side mission in this game?
Okay, my favorite side mission in this game is called Self-Reflection. And it's a mission, I don't know if you did this one, where you find... So every side mission in this game usually happens whenever you find a document. So finding documents, even if you don't read them, is a good thing. Because as soon as you find the document, even if you don't open it, a mission prompt will pop up and you have a new mission to do, which is awesome. Because if you had to open it, then I would never find any of these missions. So the mirror mission, basically an object of power that needs to be cleansed, and it's a mirror. And there's something that happens leading up to it where you find a recording of an agent that is researching this object of power, and then a researcher. The agent goes into the mirror, and then when they come back from the mirror, is talking to the agent in seemingly gibberish. But Benjamin, have you ever, of course you have, but I'm going to answer it already for you. Have you ever played around with like a voice recorder or something, especially when you were a kid, and then you just play it in reverse, and then you try to say it in reverse back to the recorder so that when you play it in normal, it sounds like normal voice? Have you ever done that before?
Of course, dude. Paul is dead. Paul is dead. Strawberry Fields Forever. Everyone knows that.
Paul is dead. Strawberry Fields Forever. Exactly. Benny knows exactly what I'm talking about. Every single person has done this. So you know what sounds, or like what someone talking sounds like in reverse.
Yeah.
And I was just enraged that this recording that you find is the researcher saying like, I don't understand you. Why are you talking gibberish? Like, this is crazy. We need to someone come get this guy and like contain him. And I'm like, bro, what? Like, clearly he's talking in reverse. And it was just so stupid, you know? But anyways, you solve a puzzle, you get into the mirror. And when you get into the mirror, you find a reflection of yourself. And the reflection of yourself is bad. And so you have a boss fight against Jesse, and you're Jesse. And I don't know, it was really cool. I really liked that side mission. Everything, like Jesse is talking, like, you know, she has a monologue. We talked about this. In her head, she's talking normal. But when she exclaims something, it's in reverse. And it's really cool how they play around with that. Everything that you find in all the rooms that you walk around in this mirrored version of the world is, of course, mirrored. And I don't know, they just played around with that a lot. In the game, you find this recurring puzzle where you have to like make a shape out of the 3 different button presses or 4 different cardinal button presses. And then you fill out a shape, and then, you know, you get a reward. And in this mirror version, you do the same thing, but you have to mirror the shape that you find. So maybe what I did is you take a snipping tool, took a snipping tool of it, and then I mirrored it on like paint or whatever, and then I was able to fix it. I mean, I tried to do it mentally, but I was like, I'll just do that instead. I thought that was really, really cool. And then that's just like one mission though, but like my favorite side plot in general was the Dr. Underhill mold thing. Yeah. I found that really, really fun. I also found that they didn't take that super seriously like other games have. Like, they were like, yeah, this is also happening, but like, it's not that deep. You can kind of like play around with it if you'd like, just because we wanted to add more like bizarre things that are taking place in the oldest house. I also thought that Dr. Underhill in general was a really cool character, so I enjoyed talking with her.
Yeah, great answer. I would say my favorite side mission in the game was probably, there's 2 that are kind of equally up there, I would say. I think one of them is the refrigerator that you find in the security kind of containment area. There's an agent who is staring at the refrigerator and has been staring at the refrigerator for like multiple days, because apparently this refrigerator, if somebody is not observing it directly, it will like kill people. Essentially, it like eats people. So you find an agent in one of these containment cells that's staring at the refrigerator and has been there for days, and he's like calling out, begging anyone to come, because of course the whole building's in lockdown, nobody's coming. But Jesse gets there, and you can kind of report it to the head of security, Langston, and he kind of tells you what to do. So you go back and you open up the cell that the agent is in. You're like, I'm coming in there. I'm going to help you. And while you are going in there, the refrigerator opens and like kills him. So you go in, and the refrigerator like teleports you to this alternate world. I think JP mentioned it briefly earlier, but there's this gigantic eldritch entity in there called the Former. And it kind of, it's gigantic. It's like launching objects at you. You have to like fight it by using your launch ability to like throw things at this giant eye that it has. It's kind of a hard fight because it deals a ton of damage. So it's like very easy to die to it, for sure. But I thought that was so cool because it like opened up this whole narrative and like lore of like what the objects of power are. Like, are all of the objects of power kind of possessed by one of these eldritch entities in the astral plane? Like, is that what's going on? It opens so many questions, and it was a great example of the whole showing rather than telling thing that I've been kind of harping on so far. And then the other was like the self-help tapes. Did you do that mission? The self-help tapes.
Dude, 100% in the the sensory deprivation tanks is
Yes.
so good.
Yeah, I mean, so these like I maybe there's like an overarching part of this mission that like story-wise that I missed, but essentially what it is you go in these sensory deprivation pods and there's these like self-help audio tapes where there's this Japanese guy. He's like a doctor in Japan, basically, and he makes these self-help tapes. So you go in and you're in this darkness, and the voice is talking to you, and it's like a Japanese voice. But then after the voice, there will be like an English dub, and he's just guiding you through these like super bizarre, like nonsensical, almost, scenarios where all sorts of things are happening. There's like I can't even begin to describe it, honestly. It's so bizarre, but I thought it was just like such a crazy little, jaunt from the main story that I was just like, what is happening here? Like, I don't understand. But it was just so funny and so bizarre that, yeah, that was one of my favorites as well.
I was looking up if like Hideo Kojima had anything to do with that, to be honest. And I know Hideo Kojima in general, he's in the video game book club Discord.
Right.
But yeah, here we go. So Hideo Kojima has a surprise cameo in the Control, which is the Dr. Yoshimi Tokui's guided imagery experience. And I think, what does he do? Maybe he either does the voice acting maybe or something in that mission. But anyways, it's really cool that's how that's introduced, and I really like those two missions. So were you able to do both of them?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. There's no third, right? Because I was waiting for a third one, and I never found that.
There
document.
might be a third. I don't know if there is. I can't
okay.
remember. I think I might remember doing 3, but I might be making.
Oh, dang! Then I definitely missed one. That sucks.
Yeah.
But those were really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I have the next question from Inferno. Did the documents and case files feel like meaningful storytelling or just extra reading? And how much did you actually read by the end? We kind of have answered this question a little bit, but I'm more curious to know how much did you read by the end?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. Like, by the end I wasn't reading them. I really wasn't. I was like opening them and like scanning them, but I really wasn't, because it was too much. It was too much. It's like, because there are some documents that are very relevant to the story, like we talked about, super relevant, give a lot of very meaningful details that are relevant to what you're exploring. But a lot of them are just random. A lot of them are just like random objects of power that you don't interact with at any point, that you don't really hear about any further than that document. And so it's just like, it doesn't add anything. So like by the end, in the beginning, I think those kind of random documents were interesting because it was like, oh man, this is bizarre. This whole world is so bizarre. Like, I want to read more about it. And so I was reading all of those, but by the end, I think it changed to where I was just like, if I want to read just like random articles about silly kind of scenarios, I'll open the SCP wiki or something like that. Like, that's not what I'm trying to experience in the game. So I wish they would have been like a little more relevant, and I wish they would have had some more like fleshed out in-game interaction type scenarios with those. But yeah, I mean, listen, I get it. I get it's a game. I get that you only have so many resources when making the game. And I think they definitely added something to the game. Like, I think they contributed to the overall atmosphere and contributed to the overall feeling of the game. And just that kind of overall sense of unknowing and uneasiness, for sure. So I appreciate what they added to a point, but yeah, I think by the end of the game, when the story was really ramping up and when I was getting more and more pulled into that aspect of the game, I didn't really care about what was happening in kind of the more random documents. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I I completely agree with you. So I'm not gonna. We've talked about it a lot, but what I will say is that I think I probably read less than 15% of the documents.
Ooh, dang.
Probably less than 15, maybe 20, but I don't think so. In the first like quarter of the game, I read, or at least opened, a lot of them.
Yeah.
In the second 75% of the game, I probably did not open one. So, I think it's around 15%.
Fair.
Okay, Ben, last question from Inferno. What do you think will happen next in the sequel?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like the natural continuation is maybe something to do with Dylan, but I don't really know what form that would take. Like there's not really a ton of loose ends outside of the ones we've talked about, and those are addressed pretty distinctly in the game, I would say. So I feel like it has to be kind of a new thing. Like what I envision for the second game is like an altered world event, an object of power happens in the world somewhere, and maybe Jesse is busy with the bureau, so Dylan has woken up from his coma and is recovered to some extent at this point, and so Dylan is sent to kind of wherever this is to investigate.
It's in Manhattan.
It's in Manhattan. The second game,
yes.
Is that confirmed?
Yeah, confirmed. It's in Manhattan.
Okay, interesting. So yeah, something happens, some new thing that we don't know about yet happens, and Dylan is sent to investigate and kind of address it. Basically, that's all I can really think of, because like I don't see many direct ways to like continue the story of Control. And I know that Alan Wake 2 was released after this game. I have not played Alan Wake 2. I don't know much about the story. Maybe there's some like the events of both games are very tied into each other. Like the entire story of Alan Wake basically is an altered world event. So maybe something happens in Alan Wake 2 that alludes to like a possible continuation in the Control version of the world. Yeah. But yeah, I feel like it kind of has to be a new thing, and I feel like it's probably Dylan as the protagonist, if I had to guess.
Yeah, so Dylan is the protagonist for sure. What I think, and they kind of showed this in the trailer a little bit, that something comes out of the oldest house. Sorry, something comes out of the oldest house. They show like a scene, I guess, of like the doors of the oldest house open and a bunch of like guards or whatever like dead by the doorsteps. So I think like, something has escaped the oldest house and you have to go and cleanse it or like get it, and I think that's what Dylan's gonna go do. Like you said, Jesse's busy. She's too powerful anyways, so she probably just tells him, hey, you go deal with it, which I think is what happens. I was literally yesterday, so this is like, news, I guess. IGN released a sort of like interview-esque style documentary with the developers of at Remedy, and they explain a little bit more the trailer that they released of Control Resonant. And one of the main people there, she was explaining how it's going to be interesting that in Manhattan there's going to be a lot more factions involved in the game. Pretty sure she uses the term faction. All of these developers, they're all Finnish, and they sound incredible. I love them. And I think she says the word factions, and that there's like all of these different factions at play in this like, weird Manhattan scape that Dylan is traversing. So we're going to meet a lot more new like people, entities, and stuff like that. So I don't know. I have a question for you, actually, Ben. Surprise question, I know. And one of the things that I was thinking of is like, okay, if the slide projector opens like portals to new worlds, maybe they'll find a slide that opens something from another world and something else escapes. But I don't know. I feel that's a little bit lazy because that's basically the story of the first game, because that's where his comes from. So I don't really know. But it's something that I'm gonna be keeping an eye out. Are you going to play Control Resonant, you think?
I think I would. Yeah, I think I would. I think it like Control was interesting enough, and like I would hope that they kind of develop on the formula a bit more, hopefully, to address kind of some of the things I've talked about. But yeah, I mean, I will say so I haven't played Alan Wake 2. I've seen like clips of it, obviously, where it seems like in Alan Wake 2, the presentation is like a lot different. It's very interactive. It's very like visceral experience. So I'm hoping, maybe with better technology and better development, maybe a bigger budget and stuff like that, they can incorporate some more like gameplay elements instead of just like having a million documents in the game to tell you stuff. So it probably wouldn't be like a day one play for me. I think I would probably see how it comes out, see how it's striking people, and then maybe make a decision there. But in general, yeah, I think I'm interested to see how it continues, how this universe kind of continues to unfold, and I would definitely be interested in playing it.
Well, I mean, 3 years later, they're gonna release Control Resonant Ultimate Edition with like 7 DLCs.
Right.
So
right,
maybe you gotta wait until that happens.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Okay, the question that I have for you is, in Control, big part of the plot is that Jesse burns a lot of the slides for the slide projector, essentially kind of like eliminating the possibility of the FBC or anyone in general to discover all of these new like worlds and altered dimensions in basically existence. I guess my question to you is, do you think that was the correct thing to do, to burn all of these slides, or no?
I don't know, like correct in what sense?
I don't know. That's just like, is it morally correct to delete, to burn all of these slides and deprive us from the possibility of contacting other dimensions?
I don't know. I mean, I think you have to understand why she did it. She just experienced like opening a portal to another dimension where a crazy malevolent entity destroys her entire town. So it's like, yeah, and I can understand why you might not want anybody else to go into these slides, right? But yeah, I mean, It seems like there's plenty to discover in these other realms. So
yeah.
I understand why Jessie did what she did. And yeah, I mean, seeing what happened where one of the other burned slides was opened by Trench and it caused the hiss, maybe we might be better off not knowing what's in there. So yeah,
that's true.
I think I stand with Jessie on that one.
I like it. I think she shouldn't have done it, but it doesn't really matter either one way or the other.
Well, tell us why.
Yeah, because I mean, I just feel like as your head of containment, I would have loved to be able to interact with other objects of power in different dimensions and see all these different people or object of power or alter world events happen, not just in our world, but in other worlds. And it would have been cool to see how else they could expand on this. They almost like close that door, like expanding on different like altered dimensions. Obviously, Remedy's doing a good job handling their universe and everything that they do with Control and Alan Wake and everything. But for sure. I don't know. I thought, whenever you have this sense of like discovery that something grand is happening, you want to kind of keep that possibility open, even though, like you said, it could bring calamitous things, which is not good.
No doubt.
But dude, the other question that I have is, give me your final thoughts on Control, and you have to give me a letter grade for this bad boy.
Okay, I'm going first. You're putting me on the spot here.
Always put you on the spot.
I have two opinions about Control. I've got two opinions. I think the first 2/3 of the game basically were kind of underwhelming. I think the story wasn't sucking me in that much. I think the environmental storytelling, the vibe of the game was really, really cool. But there wasn't like enough being done with that to keep me engaged, really. We talked about the RPG elements and it not feeling like super impactful in those early stages of the game as well. Wasn't really connecting with the characters and with Dylan and with like the overall plot of the game. I thought the combat was fun, but honestly, it was a little generic after a point. Like the enemies were very samey. There was not a lot of diversity in the enemies outside of like the mold, which is kind of contained to one area of the game. So yeah, honestly, those first 2/3 of the game were pretty underwhelming. If I were to grade that specifically, I would say like C plus B minus. But the latter half of the game I thought was great. I thought the story picked up a lot. I thought we got a lot more kind of visual elements, a lot more interactivity with the ashtray maze, with kind of how the story wraps up and some of the lore that happens. And then kind of coupling in my opinion of the DLC as well, which I thought the one that I played at least was very, very cool. Was more of what I hoped the game was a super cool, mission, exploring altered world events, like actually interacting with them, more stuff like that. So I thought those were great. And if I were grading those, it would be like an A minus. So I think overall, my opinion of the game is like solid. And I would say it's like a B for me, if I'm being honest.
I like it. I like your dissection of it. Honestly, well, the first thing that I want to say is I need to play AWE and Foundations. I mean, it sounds like they probably understood what people wanted from the game, and that's why they created AWE in the way that they did. And if your experience of it was so good, then damn, it makes me want to play it, definitely. Not just to know more about the game, but just to experience what Remedy has to offer, because the way that I'm thinking about this game is that I loved what they created. Like the oldest house and this whole universe is amazing, and it's really, really cool. And playing as Jesse and going through this like super bizarre and uneasy and tense like story was really great. It was really fun. I loved how every time you entered a new area, big bold text would pop on the screen and say like, research sector. But it was like not for fun, like you play Pokemon and you go to your next town and it says Cerulean Village and you're like, woo, Cerulean Village. Here you go to research sector and it's like research sector. Boom. Enter at your own peril, and you're like, holy fuck, I'm about to die. It's just like they create tension so well all the time. And it was so vivid. And I genuinely don't think that another game creates the same tension, except maybe Rain World. And which is why I keep making that comparison, because that's how it just felt the same to me. That made my moment like exceptionally high. Like I think I was having the most fun playing this game because of that. Yes, I had some gripes with the progression system of the game. I don't think they handled that really well. I think the story was strong in the latter half for sure. I think they just had so much to say because this is the first game of this kind of, I know that Alan Wake is in the same universe, but like of this kind of like side project, which is Control, which is becoming a main thing that they're doing. So I think that because they needed to have that setting, I am looking forward to Control Resonant not them having to do the same thing, and they can just kind of like pull in the punches immediately instead of like a little bit later.
Yeah.
So anyways, for those reasons, I really enjoyed it. I think that they're just adding a lot of layers for players if they want to experience the lore with these documents. It was fun to collect them, but that's how I was looking at them, just collectibles and not something that I actually wanted to entertain myself with. But if you did want to do that one, that's great. So I'm giving Control a letter grade of a B+.
Okay. I like it.
And we've done it, Benny. Another video game in the books. Ben, I have something to tell you.
Okay.
That was our 24th video game that we've played for Video Game Book Club.
2 years.
2 years of Video Game Book Club, which is amazing. That is my longest streak that I've had of playing games to completion. Month by month, we have played 24 games and have beaten 24 games and have talked about 24 games. So I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has been here since day one. If you've been here since day,
I think that's just us.
750, that's true. It is just us since day one. Then that's amazing as well. Thank you so much for interacting with us, for playing the games of the month with us, for suggesting games that we need to play, for being active. Y'all are awesome. So thank you so much.
Yeah, 2 years. I mean, that's such an insane amount of time to think back on. I honestly don't think we would still be doing this if it weren't for the community. I think the community has become such an incredible part of the show. talking with everyone, playing the games with everyone, discussing the games, viewer questions. It's exceeded my expectations when we first started this out in every way. We've grown to just over 200 people now. We have about 215, I think, people in the Video Game Book Club Discord. And of course, not everybody interacts and is, super active in the same way, which is totally fine. It's your community to do what you want with. But the community has been so incredible. And yeah, honestly, I don't think we would still be doing the show. I don't think we would be at 24 episodes if it weren't for the way that the community has kind of formed around us and, kept things going in that way. So absolutely love the community. Thank you all so much. And join the community. If you like the show, if you're listening, if you love the show and you're not in it already, we would love to have you in the Discord. And of course, in the Discord, what are we going to be doing next but playing the May game of the month, JP? Because that's how this show works, baby. That's how this works.
Months don't stop appearing, Benny. We got another month. That means another game.
We got another game. JP, May is my turn to pick the game of the month. I will be Benny's picking turn. The game of the month. And when I was thinking about what I needed to pick, there's some external factors that impacted this decision, I will say. So one of us, I won't say who, is undergoing a life change right now. And that life change necessitates being able to play games on the Steam Deck, probably. Yes. So thinking back to games that have been released recently that are great on the Steam Deck, that seem like great book club games, people in the Discord have played this game. A few people have played it and spoken really, really highly of it. It is a spiritual successor to a video game book club classic. If you have not guessed what I'm talking about already, I am talking about Esoteric Ebb. Esoteric Ebb is a CRPG spiritual successor to Disco Elysium, which we played a year and a half ago at this point.
Yeah.
A really great game, one that JP and I both really, really enjoyed. One that I still have a super, super high opinion of. So Esoteric Ebb basically takes kind of that Disco Elysium system of, the dice rolls in the background, interacting with all of your emotions and psyche as you're going, and it puts it in a fantasy universe. So you play as the cleric, a knight in this fantasy world, exploring this crazy world full of all sorts of things that can happen. Of course, impacted by you. You pick this crazy branching narrative. So I'm so excited. I am so excited to get into this game, to see how JP and I independently approach the game, because if you know JP and I, it's probably going to be very, very different. So I'm super excited to play this game during May with all the members of the community and to see how that shakes out.
Listen, I can hear everyone right now saying, oh my God, you just talked about for 30 minutes about how you don't like to read anything in video games, and now you pick a game whose main gameplay is reading. Well, that's the thing. The main gameplay is reading. So I'm going to interact with reading because I have to read to play the game. In Control, I don't have to read to play the game. In Control, the main gameplay is shooting guns and killing baddies. And that's what I want to do and explore. Right. Okay. So I just wanted you to, if you're thinking that right now, you got to stop it. You got to stop it. Benny and I are going to read so good. We're going to read so good. We're going to, we're going to have the university is going to give us a English degree just because of all the good reading that we're going to do with Esoteric. That's right. I'm really pumped to play this game. From the moment that I think it was Inferno Disco actually who sent the recommendation of this game in the Discord, it looks so cool. Like the visuals of it are really interesting as well. And I just want to play as this knight and I want to understand what the story is. I'm so excited for it. And I know whenever Benny and I played Disco Elysium, he played as the all-savant investigator who figured out and passed every single intelligence check. And I played as the drug addict, strong boy, muscle man who did not have 1 ounce of intelligence and was just running around punching people. And I feel like I'm going to do the same thing again, which is going to be really, really funny. But I'm super pumped to play. If you guys want to play this game alongside us, then, join the club by either joining the Discord, following us on Spotify and iTunes, or subscribing on YouTube and keeping up with us on social media as well. We're on Instagram and TikTok and all the like. So we try to be active there as well, but genuinely we're the most active on the Discord because, we have full-time jobs and lives and stuff. It's hard to be everywhere. We try our best, and, please forgive us for that. But we really appreciate you being here with us. Thank you so much for listening. Again, we wouldn't do this without you. Thank you for 24 video games that you play with us. That's amazing. Benny, I love you, bro. I hope you have a good rest of your Sunday, and everyone have a good rest of your week and a good month of May. We will be back in 2 weeks when Ben and I will discuss how Esoteric Ep is going, and we will discuss Celeste, because we're playing Celeste for the mini video game book club game of the month, or mid-month, I guess. I don't know. We need to, we're still working on the title for that. Thank you so much for being here with us. Have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.